Hi, I'm Charles with AniCap. The story begins as a guy named Alan completes a game. The game took 3 years to complete, but that is not enough for Alan. It's incredibly disappointing, and he says that it was just another weak sauce game. It was hot garbage, and Alan wishes that there was a game that took at least 10 years to beat. Alan decides not to waste any time, so he searches for exactly what he wants. In his search, he looks for a video game with garbage balancing, and he wants it to be hardcore. This leads him to a site that offers a game that never ends. Alan couldn't be more excited to get started, so he takes a look at the difficulty settings. There he finds the standard, easy, normal, and hard, but the final selection startles him. It's called Hell Mode, and its description is pretty vague. It says that regrets are the least of his worries, for he shall be faced with utter despair. Alan is a serious gamer, so he's not fazed by these words because he has heard them all before. He immediately selects the Hell Mode difficulty, and the game begins. There are a ton of character classes to choose from, and some of the options are Swordsman and Spear User. Alan takes an interest in the Demon Lord class, but there's one below it. It's the Summoner class, and Alan can only wonder why its difficulty rating is so high. Alan is looking for a challenge, so he selects Summoner, but the game says that the class is still in alpha testing. The game still allows him to choose it, so he says that he will be the game's guinea pig, and he will test the class. With all that out of the way, Alan is ready to play, so he presses the start button. This is no ordinary game though, so Alan is teleported inside of it. Moments later, a man tells his wife that she did a great job giving birth to their son. This baby is Alan, and he quickly determines that he must have just been reincarnated. Alan's father is glad to see that he's a healthy boy, and he welcomes Alan into this world. A while later, Alan is happily fed by his parents. As he eats, Alan thinks about how he used to be a 35-year-old uneducated, broke, romantically inept, white-collar worker. He has been reincarnated though, so now he's 1 year old. As a baby, he can't talk, but he can still think to himself and understand words. His parents are commoners, and they live in a frontier village. Here, people pay tax to a ruling lord to cultivate the land, so their village doesn't even have a name yet. Alan's father's name is Rodin, and he's a real family guy who works hard every single day. His mother is Theresia, and she's as sweet as can be. Alan is their only child, but his parents are very much in love, so he can tell that it won't be long before he has a sibling. That night, when left alone, Alan tries to open a status window. Of course, he's disappointed when nothing happens. Alan is enjoying his peaceful life, but he can't help but think about how he's supposed to be a summoner by now. Alan has tried to open his status window night after night for as long as he can remember, and it never works. Before going to sleep, Alan tries one more time, and he is shocked when a book appears. He screams out of shock, and that gets his parents' attention, so Alan hides the book immediately. Luckily, his parents don't see it, and they simply assume that Alan was talking in his sleep. After they leave, Alan summons the book again. He opens it this time, and he's excited to finally begin his time as a summoner. After an entire year of trying, he can finally see his stats, and there's a whole bunch more. His class is Summoner just like he selected, but the book also has a lot of information about the details of his summoning skills. The ones called Summon and Create have their own skill experience points, which means they will level up the more he uses them. Alan is delighted to see that he already has summons available, and they are the Insect Summon and Beast Summon. The letter H is next to both of them, so Alan wonders if this is their rank. Another page reveals a message that was left for Alan from the God of Creation. The message thanks Alan for helping them, and it apologizes for taking so long to get him this grimoire. Alan selected a class that is still under testing, so it took some time to finish the paperwork. This all seems okay, but the message also says that they don't accept any questions or cancellations in regards to class selection. Alan simply brushes it off because he's eager to start summoning stuff. He tries to summon an insect, but nothing happens. He tries saying the word summon insect a few different ways, but nothing works. There are no game facts or walkthroughs in this world, so Alan determines that he will have to really lock in. He has to figure this out himself, so he wonders if he has to use the create skill first. He says create insect this time, and something finally happens. Saying create insect creates a card, and a note says that one insect H rank card has been created. Alan is ready to use the card to actually summon the insect, but he hears a noise. It's his mother, so Alan has to pretend to be asleep again. Alan realizes that he won't be able to summon anything without being found out, so he will have to wait until tomorrow. Alan hates that he's actually getting pretty sleepy, so he curses this dumb, 1-year-old body of his. Alan falls asleep soon after, and his grimoire disappears. The next day, his parents work hard as they usually do, and Alan's mother helps him learn to walk. Eventually, he's left for his nap, but Alan has other plans. He brings out his grimoire and immediately summons the insect. This causes an immense amount of light to come pouring out of the book, and luckily his mother doesn't see it. Orbs of light now float around Alan, and he has no clue what's going on. Just then, the lights all converge on the book, and an insect comes out of it. The creature makes a strange noise as it hops around, and Alan points out that it's a giant grasshopper. He wonders if it will listen to his orders, so he instructs it to come towards him. Alan is still a baby, so he can barely formulate actual words, but the instructions are clear enough. Unfortunately, they're ineffective, as the grasshopper doesn't listen to him at all. Instead, it just goes in the opposite direction, so Alan determines that it's just a dumb bug. Alan looks for help inside of the grimoire, and he's delighted to see that it shows him the grasshopper's stats. Alan can even give it a formal name, so he names it Denka. Alan notices a section that is called buffs, and he wonders what it means. It says +1 endurance and +1 agility, but it doesn't seem to be affecting the grasshopper. Just then Alan realizes something, so he goes to check on his own stats again. He's instantly amazed because the buffs are actually boosting his own stats. That is even more awesome than anything he could have imagined, so he yells out. Unfortunately, this gets his mother's attention, and she is horrified by the grasshopper. She immediately crushes it, and Alan can only cry out to his loyal companion Denka. After several days of toying around with his skills, Alan eventually moved on to creating the beast. It's a mouse, and he settled on the name Mousy. Mousy is dumb as rocks, just like Denka, but Alan can't complain. They aren't very smart, but they use their abilities whenever he tells them to. Mousy has the scurry ability, so whenever Alan tells him to use it, Mousy scurries around the room. As for Denka, his ability is called Hop. Alan has determined that this world is crawling with powerful monsters, and he knows that he won't be able to defeat any of them with his 2 little companions. Alan has also learned that he can stock up to 10 summon cards for each creature, and the most important thing is their buffs. For example, by stocking 10 of Mousy's cards, Alan's attack stat goes up by 10. Thanks to stacking so many of Mousy's cards, Alan can pack enough punch to easily surpass what any regular baby can do. Furthermore, the experience required to level up skills and characters in Hell mode is 100 times what it is in normal mode. Just then, Alan and his mother greet Rodin after he returns from a hunt. Rodin is a commoner, but when the cold season comes around, he goes monster hunting with the other men from the village. Rodin just defeated a wild boar, and he wants to know if Alan wants to see it. Alan can't even hide how excited he is, because this will be his first look at a real monster. Rodin then puts Alan on his shoulders, and the loving family says goodbye before parting ways. Alan gets his first look at what this world looks like outside of the house, and he is amazed. Rodin points at a flock of monsters, and he tells Alan that they're called Albarans. They flock together and head north at this time of year. They are monsters that signal the coming of fall, and Rodin reveals that he named Alan after them. For these monsters, the sky is the limit, and they can use their wings to fly wherever they want in the world. That is what freedom really is, and that is what Robin wants for Alan. Unfortunately, Rodin took a scolding from Theresia, but he knows that that's what he gets for naming their son after a monster. Eventually, they arrive at their destination, and Alan is amazed to see how big the boar is. It's terrifying to see up close, and Alan determines that he wouldn't be able to beat this thing in a fight. Just then, a guy named Gerda approaches Rodin. Gerda tells everyone that today's heavyweight champion has arrived, and all the other guys celebrate. They were only able to defeat the boar because of Rodin, but he's too humble, and he says that he just got lucky. Rodin tells Alan to introduce himself, so Alan formally gives his name. Gerda is stunned because Alan's only 1-year-old, and he's already so civilized. Gerda's daughter is the same age, but she is still just talking nonsense like a normal baby. Alan wonders how strong these boars are, so Gerda explains that they are C-rank monsters. They are really tough, and it takes 20 guys to take one of them down. Alan listens very closely, and he's pleased to hear this information because it gives him a benchmark to determine the strength of the monsters. 10 months later, Alan screams in celebration as his create and summon abilities have reached level 2. He unlocks a couple other things as well, so Alan really begins to feel the gamer adrenaline rush. He immediately checks his stats and sees that he can now create G-rank creature cards. On top of that, he has gained a skill that fuses summons together, and his card inventory space has doubled. Of course, this means more cards, but most importantly, it means that he will get double the buffs. Also, now his Grimoire has a note feature that reads his mind and writes down his thoughts. Alan is ready to fuse some stuff together, but he realizes that he doesn't have enough magic power. That night, Alan works hard to eat a lot of food so he can recover the magic power he used up. After dinner, Alan's ready to go to work. He tries to fuse Mousy 1 and Mousy 2, but nothing happens. It still says that he doesn't have enough magic power, but he just recovered it to his max. Alan can't do anything about this right now, so he decides to create a new summon card instead. He tries to create Beast G, but once again he's told that he doesn't have enough magic power. This means he can't fuse or create anything new with his current max magic power, so Alan blames it all on the hell mode he selected. A while later, we see that Alan has turned 3 years old. He is still level 1, but his stats show that he has been stacking several buffs. Most of his natural stats are in the single digits, but his buffs add 10 and 20 points above that. He now has a beast called Molly, and he's able to fuse it with Hopper. This creates a Bird G card and gives Alan +2 agility and +2 intelligence. Alan names the bird Chappie, and he summons it immediately. Chappie has the voice mimic ability, and Alan is amazed when the bird makes a perfect imitation of his voice. This will be really useful for tricking enemies, so Alan looks forward to using it. Alan then summons all his creatures and has them use their abilities. He instructs Hopper to use Provoke, so the frog begins jumping. This will serve as a good distraction on the battlefield, so Alan turns to Molly next. He tells it to use Dig, so Molly digs a giant hole in the ground. This will be great for creating traps, so he tells Molly that he did a good job. These are all the G-rank summons Alan learned a while ago, and he's pleased with how useful they are. Alan then recites his motto, which is that if you dominate the stats, then you dominate the game. The key to becoming a great summoner is knowing all about the various stat buffs of all his creatures. There is so much depth and complexity in being a summoner in this game, so Alan declares that this is what hardcore gaming is all about. Just then, Alan falls into the hole, and he is reminded that he probably isn't ready to fight monsters anytime soon. A bell sounds in the distance, which means it's 3 o'clock. Alan dreads this time of day because something terrible happens. A girl calls out to him, and we see that it's his neighbor named Krenna. Alan declares that he is Alan the Honorable, and Krenna declares that she is Krenna the Fierce. She challenges Alan to a duel, and he eagerly accepts. This couldn't be any less cool in Alan's eyes, but he knows that he has to take these play fights with Krenna seriously. If he doesn't act like a normal kid, Alan fears that his secret might be found out. He immediately jumps into battle with Krenna, but he's surprised by how fast she is. Alan poured all his creature buffs into agility, and still he can barely keep up with Krenna. Eventually, her immense attacking pressure overwhelms Alan, and she shatters his sword. He says that she's too overpowered, but Krenna declares that she's just getting started. Afterwards, Alan's parents see that Krenna came to play with Alan. She declares that she just finished dueling him, and Theresia points out that it's getting dark outside. Krenna decides to go home, and we see that Alan hasn't been able to move after being defeated. Theresia is pregnant again, so Alan helps her carry her bags. That night, Alan tells his parents that he wants to help them harvest food because Theresia has a big tummy now. His parents are surprised, but Alan assures them that he can do it. Alan thinks about how he has the stamina of a full-grown adult now, so he can definitely help. Theresia says that kids like Alan shouldn't have to work, so he should just keep playing with Krenna. Rodin agrees with her, as he points out that Alan already helps enough inside the house. Alan tries to insist, but he's shot down again. Rodin points out that Alan will end up doing it eventually, so he should just enjoy life without farm work while he can. This reminds Alan that their family will be commoners forever, and he will eventually grow up to help them. Also, working the farms is on a different level from house chores, and it's really grueling stuff. His parents are right to tell him to wait because Alan wouldn't wish that kind of work on his 3-year-old son either. Alan agrees to wait, so his parents are delighted to hear that. Just then, Theresia says that she has noticed that Alan has been throwing rocks at a tree out back the past few days. She wonders why, so Alan reminds his parents that they told him that there are monsters in the forest outside the house. There's no telling what they will do, so Alan vows to protect his mom from the monsters with the rocks. His parents think it's adorable, but deep down Alan knows that this isn't the truth. In reality, he was only doing it to see if he could learn skills aside from summoning. Alan's parents then bring up how much they enjoy watching Alan duel against Krenna. They always look like they're having so much fun, and Rodan can't wait for their appraisal ceremony. Alan doesn't know what that is, so they explain that it's something that will happen when he turns 5 years old. It's a divine ceremony, and it will determine what kind of talent Alan has. With any luck, they say that a good talent will help Alan break out of the commoner life. Alan has high hopes for this day, and he very much looks forward to it. A while later, Alan sees that Denka is still bouncing like a champ in the snow. He was testing something, and now he knows that he can summon a creature for a whole day without any problems. Just then, Krenna arrives, and they jump into battle. Alan is at a severe disadvantage because he's a summoner, and Krenna wins once again. Rodan arrives to greet his family, and he sees that Alan was knocked out again. Just then, Theresia is shocked as Denka jumps on her leg. She falls over, and Alan only now realizes that he left Denka out. Thankfully, Theresia is okay, but everyone panics as she's ready to give birth. Rodan sends Krenna to get her mother, so she rushes off. Alan desperately tries to warm up some water, and he begins to wish that he played a birthing sim before coming to this world. The water's ready, so Alan wonders what's next, but Rodan can't remember. The guys begin to panic even more, but thankfully Krenna's parents arrive. Krenna's mother tells the guys to let the girls handle this, and she kicks them all out of the room. Hours later, the boys return to the room to see that everything went well, and the family's second child has been born. It's another boy, so Rodan names him Mash. Theresia loves it, but first she wants to make sure that it's not another name Rodan took from a monster. Rodan can't deny it, but Theresia surprisingly laughs. She still loves the name, and everyone celebrates. As Alan watches them, he can't help but wonder why he was reincarnated. At first, he just wanted to play a hardcore game with garbage balancing, but he realizes something now. He was broke, uneducated, romantically inept, and a totally average Joe, so he is not sad to leave his past life behind. There's nothing to hold him back now, so he's going to hoard the best equipment and max out every one of his stats. Alan's parents call him over to say hello to his brother, so Alan welcomes Mash to this world. As he looks at everyone, Alan can't help but admit that this family stuff is pretty nice. Alan makes his brother cry by accident, but his parents tell him it's okay because he cried way louder when he was born. Alan is much happier than he thought he would be in this world, and he has come to a decision. He's not exactly sure how he will pull it off, but he wants to free his family from the drudgery of the commoner life. A while later, Alan wonders what the appraisal ceremony will be like. Rodan explains that it's a special event that everyone has to participate in when they turn 5 years old. If it turns out that Alan has a talent, then he might be able to rise out of the commoner life. The only catch though is that being talented will also mean that he will have rivals. When the people first settled in this area, they started making lots of babies, so there are a lot of kids turning 5 years old at the same time as Alan. Krenna is one of them, and she joins our hero as he heads to the ceremony. When they arrive, Alan's surprised to see how well dressed the other kids are, and he wonders if they're all commoners. Alan and his family are a lower class called serfs, so the other villagers look down on them. Soon they're greeted by the priests, who say that they owe everything to Elmia, the god of creation. People come from all walks of life, but Elmia blesses everyone equally, with great opportunity. This country has even seen heroes whose lineage can be traced back to serfdom. The villagers can't believe that some legendary heroes came from such a low class, but it makes Alan hopeful. He remembers reading something about this before entering the game, and now it makes sense why everyone has to go through the ceremony. Inside, Alan sees the statues of the gods that are worshipped in this church. One of them is Elmia, and Alan remembers that this person was the one that sent him a letter. The appraisal ceremony begins, and the first kid to be called up is named Palomas. The priest explains that by placing his hand on this crystal ball, any talent and attributes they have will be inscribed on a metal plate. Paloma goes to touch the crystal, and his father tells him that he will be fine. Paloma's stats are shown on the metal plate, and Alan notices that it looks like the stats page that he sees in his grimoire. The priest declares that Paloma has the talent to be a merchant, and Paloma's father says that it's great news. He thanks the heavens, so Alan determines that having any talent at all is cause for celebration. Alan notices that attributes get displayed with ranks instead of numbers, and his grimoire makes note of it. He has his grimoire out in front of everyone, but it's because he learned that no one else can see it. The next kid ends up crying to his parents because nothing happens when he touches the crystal ball, and this makes it clear that not everyone gets a talent. Another kid named Dagora gets the Axe Wielder talent, and it's the first A-rank attribute they've seen. Several hours later, all the kids have been appraised, and only Alan and Krenna are left. Krenna goes to take the test, and everyone's shocked when the crystal ball begins to grow brighter than any other time. Her father can only wonder what it means, and the priest says it's a miracle. Krenna has the talent called Sword Lord, and it's one of the best talents that exist. Gerda says that she hit the jackpot with the Sword Lord talent, but Krenna's disappointed because she wanted the Swordsman one. This is even better though, so Gerda celebrates. Alan figured that she would have a great talent because it's the only way to justify how ridiculously OP she is in their sword fights. It's Alan's turn now, and he's relieved because this assessment will show his parents that he's a summoner, and he won't have to keep hiding it. This time, the crystal ball shines even brighter, and the force it puts out knocks Alan back. Roden eagerly wants to hear what kind of talent Alan has, but everyone is shocked as the priest says that he doesn't have one. Alan can't believe it because he should at least have something, but the results are clear. Instead of showing a talent, it just shows a bunch of random letters, and Alan wonders if this is some kind of glitch in the game. He blames the game developers and says that Elmia, the supposed god of creation, should learn how to debug his game. This means that no one will know that he's a summoner, but he's surprised by Roden. Roden says that it's okay that he has no talent, and they head home. His parents tell him that talents don't matter, and Alan will always be their pride and joy. Alan thinks about how his family doesn't have much, and they don't even have a bathtub to bathe in. They're looked down on for being poor, but Alan says that he's still happy he was born into such a loving family. That night, Alan goes over everything he learned. All his attributes are E rank, and today he learned that he's the only one in this entire world playing on Hell mode. Everyone at the appraisal ceremony was 5 years old, which means they should all be a level 1 like him. The ranking system probably affects the amount of growth that they can accept whenever they level up. The only thing that can explain why all his attributes are E rank is because the progress in Hell mode is 100 times harder than normal. This also means that his attributes only show 100th of what his actual ranks are. Alan was stuck in a loop of playing weak sauce games, and now he entered the most difficult game ever. Most people would give up, but Alan is determined to prove to everyone that hardcore gaming is where it's at. Those random letters instead of a talent were clearly a glitch, so Alan decides to write some angry letters to the dev team. Later, Alan and his family go to Krenna's celebration. Krenna learned that Sword Lord is even better than the Swordsman talent, which means that she's going to be even stronger. The chief of the village gave them some celebratory liquor, but Roden has been acting strangely all day. He tells Gerda to enjoy the alcohol, but he's clearly bothered by something. Alan wonders if he's jealous about Krenna getting the Sword Lord talent instead of him, but Alan knows that his father isn't that petty. Gerda refuses to drink while Roden's upset, and the truth finally comes out. Rhoda told Gerda earlier that his family will be cutting ties with them, and Gerda demands to know why. Roden says that it's not what he wants to do, but it's something they have to do for Krenna. Her talent is extraordinary, and she might even end up joining the knighthood to serve their country. There's a good chance she can even become nobility, so people with her talent shouldn't waste their time socializing with serfs. The two guys begin to argue, and Alan wonders if he should do something. He tells Krenna to calm them down, but the wives have it taken care of. They use brute force to end the argument, and they tell Alan that the two guys always butt heads like this. They have been friends for the longest time, and they used to be hotheads who threw punches at each other all the time. The four of them are actually childhood friends, and they grew up in the same village. They heard that a new village was being built, so they all agreed to join the effort. Their houses even have the same design, and the two guys built them with their own hands. Roden and Gerda calm down as they talk about construction, and they drink the celebratory liquor. A few days later, Gerda's shocked as he learns that the Order of Knights are coming to see Krenna. Everyone gathers in the village to see the knights, and they can't believe they're coming for Krenna because she's just a kid. Alan is also impressed because it seems that word is starting to spread about her incredible talent. The kid named Dagora arrives, and Alan notices that he's really leaning into his axe talent by carrying a giant stick around. Dagora wonders what Alan is doing here, and he says that talentless losers have no place here. Krenna defends him by saying that Alan is strong, but Dagora points out that all of Alan's ranks were E. Just then the knights arrive, and even the knight captain is here. His name is Zenoff, and he's a swordmaster. Krenna is called to meet with them, and Alan can tell that she's beyond excited. It's been 3 years since they first started playing knights, and now she's meeting the real thing. She introduces herself to Zenoff, and Alan wonders if them being here means that she will become a knight now. Gerda's worried, as he points out that Krenna's only 5 years old, and she hasn't even touched a real sword before. Zenoff says it doesn't matter as long as she has the sword lord talent, and he begins to wonder if they're lying. Things become very tense, and Alan can sense that something isn't right. Zenoff explains that falsifying the results of the appraisal ceremony is punishable by death. This is a very serious matter, and they must determine if Krenna's talent as a sword lord is legitimate. There's only one way to confirm, and Zenoff shocks everyone as he reveals that they will hold a fencing duel. Alan wonders if he heard this guy right, and Gerda begs him to have mercy because Krenna's only a child. Zenoff refuses and says that she must fight or her and her entire family will be eliminated on the spot. Everyone is horrified to hear this, and Alan thinks about how this isn't fair at all. Unlike everyone else, Krenna isn't worried. A knight brings her a sword, and she's just excited to use a real one for the first time. She tells Gerda that she will be fine, and not even he can believe how calm she is. Krenna prepares for her duel that will determine the fate of her entire family, but she isn't worried at all. Instead, she introduces herself as Krenna the Knight, and she challenges her opponent. Her opponent, named Lebrand, has the spear talent, and he accepts her challenge. Their duel begins, and everyone's amazed as Krenna is able to use a sword that's nearly as tall as her. Alan analyzes the fight closely, and thinks about how Krenna's sword mastery skill should be about level 5, thanks to their daily play fighting. That's pretty good for someone her age, but he isn't sure how much that will help her against a knight. The battle intensifies, and Gerda fears for Krenna's life as she's pushed back. The knight doesn't hold back one bit when he finds an opening in her attack, and he sends her crashing into a wall. Gerda wants to go to his daughter, but the knights hold him back. Krenna's in really bad shape, and we see that Alan is being held back as well. Alan thinks about how Krenna may be a sword lord, but adults still have an advantage in skill and level. This fight isn't even close to being fair, but everyone goes completely silent when something begins to happen. Some kind of power begins flowing out of Krenna, and she almost becomes a different person as she charges back into the fight. The smile is completely gone from her face, and she begins to dominate the battle. The knight determines that this has to be an extra skill, and he's quickly overwhelmed. Krenna is even able to destroy his sword, so Zenoff declares that the duel is over. Krenna is surprised to hear that they're done already, and she happily thanks Lebrand for the battle. He's completely defeated, and everyone cheers for Krenna. She's the real deal sword lord, so Gerda probably says that that's his daughter. Zenoff says that there's no refuting Krenna's talent, and he commends Gerda for raising a sword lord. Krenna has a marvelous talent, so he apologizes for doubting them. Zenoff would like to discuss her future, but Gerda doesn't know if he can trust the knights. Zenoff tells him that he can bring his friends if it would make him more comfortable, so Gerda invites Rodin and his family. They all meet at the village chief's house, and there are more people here than Alan expected. It makes sense for the chief's son to be here, but Alan wonders why the kid with the axe is here as well. Zenoff formally introduces himself and explains that he was sent here to determine whether a true sword lord was among them. The answer is now very clear, and this means that there will be some big changes. This village was set to be named after the chief once it was fully established, but now that they know that a sword lord has been born here, the king wants something else. The king has decided that they should honor this momentous occasion by naming the village Krenna Village. Gerda can't believe this, and the chief happily agrees. Zenoff explains that 3 years back, there was a sword lord born from a noble family. Alan can immediately tell that there's something wrong with this, because in this game, a sword lord can only be born in the serf, commoner, and baron social classes. Zenoff says that this sword lord went on to serve the royal family, but he failed to meet expectations. This led to a reappraisal, and they found that this guy was actually just an ordinary swordsman. Afterwards, it was discovered that numerous members of nobility had exaggerated their talents. Because of this, the kingdom has made it a point to thoroughly verify all results. Xenoff apologizes again for having to test Krenna, and he tells Gerda to keep helping her flourish as a sword lord. When she reaches the age of 12, she can go study at the academy and eventually serve directly under the royal family. Dagora wonders if anyone that goes to the academy can become a knight, but his father must apologize for his son's lack of manners. Xenoff explains that at some point an instructor will be dispatched to this village, so Dagora should do his best to study and earn admission into the academy. Krenna says that Alan should study with them, but Dagora says that Alan can't study himself out of a paper bag. Alan can't believe that these kids are arguing over his intelligence, because little do they know that he's actually 40 years old outside of the game. Xenoff notices that Alan has dark eyes and dark hair, so he wonders who he is. Rodin explains that Alan is his son, and Gerda introduces them. Xenoff immediately recognizes Rodin the boar hunter, and he apologizes for not recognizing him sooner. He says that Rodin is a village legend, but Rodin doesn't even know why this guy knows his name. It turns out that the Baron is most fond of the great boar meat that is supplied by this village. From what they heard, Rodin is the man responsible for taking on the most dangerous role in the hunts. This is praise from the Baron himself, so Alan says that his dad is a superstar. After they part ways, Rodin says that Krenna will probably be a knight one day. What Xenoff also said proves that serfs like Rodin the boar hunter can get recognized by the big shots. Rodin says that they should always keep working because you never know what good will come from it. Alan agrees, and he knows this better than anyone, playing this game in hell mode. Just then, Alan reveals that he snuck out some of the food from the dinner so he could give it to his mom and Mash. He wonders if that was a bad thing to do, but Rodin reveals that he did the same thing. A while later, Alan yells in excitement because he finally leveled up his summon skill. He now has the enhanced skill, and he wonders if this means that he can make his summon stronger. Alan also unlocked F-rank creatures, but he still has to fuse them together to get new ones. Alan wonders what type he got this time, and he hopes that he got something like a dragon. To top it all off, Alan's inventory space went up from 20 to 30, and that means he will be able to get even more buffs from his monsters. It's been 2 entire years since he last leveled up his summon skill, but that's just how it goes when you play a game at the hardest difficulty. That night, Alan cleans up after dinner before getting ready to experiment with his new skills. He notices that the scar Rodin used to have on his arm is gone, so Rodin explains what happened earlier. During today's boar hunt, Rodin passed something called the Trial of the Gods. The Trial of the Gods is a special moment that happens occasionally during a hunt. The hunter feels a sudden burst of energy that gets rid of all their wounds and exhaustion. This sounds familiar to Alan, so he determines that this is how the people in this world describe the feeling they get when they're actually just leveling up. Alan can't see his father's stats, but he's a battle-hardened warrior, and he's sure that Rodin must be a pretty high level by now. Even though Alan's summon skill went up, he's still just level 1, and he isn't even close to leveling up. He has no experience points at all, and he knows that he's never going to get any unless he starts beating some monsters. The problem is that serfs like him and his family can't leave the village without permission. The only exception is for hunting, so Alan says that he would like to join a hunt with his father. Rodin refuses, as he points out that hunting isn't a game. It's incredibly dangerous, and people can even lose their lives. That night, Alan sees that he's received another message from Elmia, the god of creation. They fixed the glitchy text from the appraisal ceremony, and this message shows his real appraisal results. Instead of all his stats being E rank, they are much higher. Most of his attributes like attack and HP are either A rank or C rank, while he has S rank for magic power and intelligence. This is obviously a much better result, and Alan even has the same amount of S, A, B, and C ranks as Krenna. His life has been an utter grind, but these results make it all worth it. It's finally time to experiment with his powers, so Alan starts by using Enhance on Denka. Alan finds that it boosts the stats of the creature itself, especially the same 2 stats that it gives buffs for. Unfortunately, it looks like enhancing creatures doesn't actually affect his buffs. Alan summons Denka to see what it looks like now, and he can immediately tell the difference. It's not much bigger, but it definitely looks like Denka has been enhanced. This proves to Alan that there's more to being a summoner than just bringing out the biggest and baddest monsters. After going through a cycle of summoning and unsummoning, Alan learned that the enhancements on a card don't go away. This means that as long as he has the magic power to spare, Alan can enhance all the cards in his inventory. Alan has been testing all the various combinations for his fusion skill, but he still hasn't been able to unlock the new type. There's only one possibility left, so he tries to fuse together Insect F and Bird F. This surprisingly works, but Alan is disappointed when he sees that the card just says grass. It's pretty confusing, and he wonders how grass is a summonable creature type. Alan is delighted, however, when he sees what buffs he gets from this card. It gives a magic power buff that increases his magic power from 7 to 12. Having this buff means that Alan can do way more stuff over the course of the day without having to wait as long for his magic power to recover. Alan always feared that it would take him decades to level up, but this gives him hope that he can level up sooner. Alan summons it to see what it can do, and he's surprised by the little apple creature that appears. Alan names it Appo, and it's pretty clear to him that this little guy was not made for fighting. Appo pulls out his own status page and shows Alan that its ability is called Aroma. Alan tells Appo to use the ability, and he's confused when the little apple just plants itself in the ground. The sapling that grows out of it does kind of smell like an essential oil, and Alan's delighted by the smell. Alan imagines having a beautiful garden, but he quickly reminds himself that he isn't an isekai gardener. Just then Alan's mother arrives, and Alan can't get Appo to turn back into a card. Luckily, she doesn't think much of it, and just likes the smell. Alan can't help but wonder what Appo's deal is, and he questions if Appo has any use outside of his buffs. Later, Alan spars with Krenna, and he's quickly reminded that he still can't compete with her. Krenna, however, points out that he seems tougher now, and Alan realizes that his sword mastery skill is all the way at level 3. His inventory expansion also gave him more space to buff his endurance and attack, so he's a more formidable fighter now. Alan wonders if Appo's aroma skill has any effect in battle, but it doesn't seem like it. Just then, Alan remembers that his Phyto Summon has an attack skill called Chomp, and he wants to test it out. He doesn't want to use it on a human though, so it will have to wait. Afterwards, Alan continues, throwing stones at the tree behind the house. He has thrown at it at least 20,000 times by now, but there's no sign of his skill leveling up. Alan doesn't have much time either, because he has to look after Mash and help his mom with chores because she's pregnant again. Alan determines that he has to stop trying to learn other skills and just focus on increasing his summon level instead. He's ready to give up on learning the throw skill, but he can't help himself. He feels like he's just one toss away from leveling up, and this feeling makes it impossible for him to quit. Just then, Alan notices that some plants are starting to grow around the house, and it's like they have a garden now. Alan figured out a few things from testing, so he explains what Appo's skill does. Appo's aroma skill can shorten magic power recovery time from 6 hours to 5. This allows Alan to do even more daily activities, but all his responsibilities make him feel like he never has enough time. That night, Alan wonders why his father's taking so long to get back from today's hunt. He hears yelling in the distance, and he runs outside to find that his father has been injured. Rodin's in terrible shape because they took a boar fang right to the gut. The wound is gruesome, and Alan can tell that the other warriors had no choice but to cauterize it. Gerda explains that they just barely managed to keep Rodin alive by using a healing herb. It's called the Merle's flower, and Theresia can only wonder how they had such a valuable herb. It's incredibly expensive, but Gerda explains that he was given gold coins by the Knight Captain as an apology. He says that they're very lucky because Rodin wouldn't be alive right now if it wasn't for the flower. The other hunters are furious as they blame a certain commoner for what happened, and they have had enough. Their anger isn't helping, so Gerda tells everyone to give Rodin and his family some peace. Alan wonders what this commoner had to do with this, so Gerda explains. The chief told the hunters that he wanted commoners to join them on their boar hunts. Boar meat is very valuable, and it's hard to come by. Most of it gets sent to the Baron, and the leftovers are split between the hunters. The hunts are incredibly dangerous, and the hunters suffer many casualties every year, so commoners never volunteer themselves to join. Serfs, on the other hand, hunt as much as they can because it's how they make a living. This last hunt was different because some commoners actually volunteered. They heard talk of a hero among the serfs, so they wanted to see this hero firsthand. Zerov called Rodin a hero in front of everyone, and that became like an official endorsement. Everyone assumed that commoners would be safe to join the hunt as long as the hero Rodin was around. Rodin and Gerda didn't like the idea of commoners joining the hunt, but they couldn't refuse the chief's decision. To make things worse, the commoners turned out to just be bums who wouldn't practice seriously. They never listened, and it was because they thought that being taught by serfs was beneath them. On the day of the hunt, the hunters gave the commoners the easiest job. They only needed to hold the bear's attention, but when the time came, they messed up badly. They threw the hunters' entire strategy out the window, so the hunters were forced to improvise. The hunt turned into total chaos, and Rodin was injured when he rescued one of the commoners. Luckily, they were able to slay the boar, but Rodin was the one to pay the price for having to protect the commoner. Alan is horrified to see his father this way, and he's really hard on himself. He calls himself a loser because he's only been focusing on himself, and he hasn't really been helping anyone. The next morning, Alan says that he will take over watching Rodin, but Theresia tells him that he needs to get some rest. Just then, Rodin wakes up, and everyone's glad to see that he's conscious. Alan, meanwhile, can only wonder what he's been doing this entire time. He has been totally preoccupied with powering himself up, but he wonders what good is power without purpose. Alan realizes now that for the people around him, this is not a game. It's a harsh world, and they're doing everything they can to survive in it. Gerda arrives to deliver Rodin's share of the boar meat, and he tells the family that they have nothing to worry about. They're going to make sure that they're well taken care of over the winter, so Rodin can focus on getting better. Alan also tells his father to leave everything to him, and he vows to keep their family safe. Alan has never been more serious, so everyone is shocked by his determination. These are not just empty words, as Alan takes over a lot of his father's responsibilities. He gets the water for the entire family, but the other men point out that he's putting too much in his buckets. Alan assures them that he will be fine, and he shocks them all by carrying so much. Alan has decided that it's time to drop the act because he will have to show some of his true power to take care of his family. This village already has an up-and-coming hero named Krenna, so it won't be a problem if a talentless serf like him draws a little more attention. From this day forward, Alan decided to pour every buff into his physical stats. This is a complete turn from what he was doing before, as he now ditches all his magic power stats. It was a tough decision, but Alan has determined that family comes first. Later, Alan goes to learn how to harvest potatoes. Gerda's the one teaching him, and he explains that Alan will have to use both hands to pull the potatoes up by the root. Alan amazes him when he's able to pull them with one hand, and Gerda realizes that Alan is much stronger than he thought. Alan says that he got it from his father, and he immediately gets to work. After Alan is done, he laments how the Baron will get half of everything, even though he did all the work. Just then, the village chief arrives, and he has brought the commoner to apologize. The guy says sorry, and he thanks Rodin for saving him. Alan thinks about how an apology won't help anything, but Rodin is much more forgiving. He tells the guy to be more careful next time, and Alan is in awe of his father. Theresia is hard on the guy, as she points out that Rodin nearly lost his life because of him. She points out that everyone has a family to go back to, regardless of their social class, so she tells him to keep that in mind. The other hunters arrive, and they're all glad to see that Rodin is doing much better. Some of them even want him to join them on their next hunt, so Theresia must tell them that Rodin is still recovering. A while later, Alan clears some space in a field to test something out. He summons a bunch of his frogs and sets up a little trap. He has the frogs use their provoke ability, and Alan patiently waits nearby. He knows that this trap is pretty cliche, but it might be able to get him some wild birds that will help his family survive the winter. Unfortunately, nothing comes, so Alan wonders if the range of the skill is not wide enough. He's ready to go back to the drawing board to come up with a new plan, but he's shocked when a wild bird finally appears. This bird ends up being way tougher than he expected, as it completely destroys his trap. It starts wiping out all the frogs, and Alan realizes that this bird is an albaheron. Alan thought the skill would attract a few small birds, so he's horrified to see that it actually brought a B-rank monster. This bird that he was named after looks pretty tough, so Alan decides to just run away from it. Just then, Alan remembers that his enhanced skill is up to level 2 now. That can boost his creature stats from plus 10 to plus 20, and he already enhanced every summon in his entire inventory. If there were ever a time to fight a monster, it would be now, so Alan decides to give it a shot. Fighting will help him protect his family, and besides that, hardcore gamers never shy away from a challenge. Alan manages to land an attack on the beast, and he's immediately pushed back. He counters by summoning a bunch of Fidos, and they swarm the giant bird. Alan celebrates too soon, however, as the powerful beast destroys them. Alan takes another hit, and he notices that this attack hurt a lot more than the first one. He just now realizes that he has been losing buffs from each summoned creature that the bird defeated, and it's making him weaker. This is the major drawback to being a summoner, and Alan's body's now giving up on him. The situation only gets worse as the bird goes in to end his life, and Alan wonders if this will be the end of him. Alan desperately tries to think of a way out of this situation, but the beast is ready to end his life. Just then, Alan calls on his sucker monsters, and they manage to do some damage. Alan never tested them before, but it's clear now that they have some kind of energy drain attack. Alan is a lot weaker after losing so many of his summons and their buffs, but that won't be a problem if he can keep draining the bird's energy. Alan calls on more of his monsters, and this allows him to land a direct attack. Thanks to the suckers draining its energy, Alan is able to defeat the giant bird, and Alan's grimoire reveals something amazing. Alan just defeated one Albaharan, so he has gained 100 experience points for his efforts. Alan celebrates as he just defeated his first monster, and it's giving him a rush he's never felt before. Everyone back home is shocked when he brings the bird back, and they wonder what happened. Alan simply says that it landed nearby, and he was able to take it by surprise. Gerda notices that the bird has some bite marks on it, so he wonders if Alan bit the thing himself. Alan doesn't want to reveal his true powers, so he says that he must have been biting it without realizing it. Gerda tells Rodin that he will bleed it out for them, and he has Alan help him. Gerda explains that bleeding the bird cuts its weight in half, but only half of what's left will be edible. The bird's beak can be pretty valuable, and their wings should fetch a pretty penny as well. Alan listens closely, and he's just glad that Gerda is willing to teach him all this stuff. Unfortunately, they will have to pay a 60% tax for a monster of this rank. The upper class doesn't tax the lower rank monsters, but this bird is a D rank. Alan is amazed when Gerda pulls out the bird's magic core, but unfortunately, this falls under the tax as well. Gerda points out that a kid like Alan only has to hunt because Rodin got injured. However, they will be able to use this fact as leverage to negotiate a bigger cut with the chief. Just then, Alan says that he has an idea, and they go to speak with the chief. Gerda tries to tell the chief that they will give him the bird's wings as long as they can keep the rest. The chief must reject that offer because the Baron has asked for them to deliver even more meat this year. Gerda throws in the magic stone to sweeten the offer, but that still won't be enough for the Baron. This is when Alan's plan kicks in, as the two guys use guilt to convince the chief. They say that their village is starving because the great hero Rodin isn't able to go on the hunts, and Alan says that he's getting dizzy from hunger. Gerda curses this cruel world, and he wonders who's to blame for this. The chief knows that it's him, so he allows them to keep most of the bird. Alan's true intentions are then revealed, as he says that this means that they will be able to keep all the meat from now on, as long as they turn in the wings and the magic stones. Gerda points out that it would be really hard to catch another Albaharan anyway, so the chief agrees. If they're lucky enough to wrangle up another one, then they can keep all the meat and just hand in the wings and the magic stones. Alan goes right back to work, and he sets up another trap. 2 Albaharans arrive this time, but Alan has experience now. He gets his frogs to safety, and he immediately uses suckers to drain the birds of their energy. As they become weaker, Alan strikes them with the rock and sends a bunch of Fidos in to attack. The powerful birds try to fight back, but they're not weak enough for Alan to finish them off with his sword. Alan has been out hunting once every 3 days since beating that first bird, and this is the first time that he didn't lose any summons. It's a flawless victory, and he earns 200 experience points. This brings his total to 1000, and this levels Alan up to level 2. Alan is delighted to see that he recovered all his HP and MP after leveling up. His stat increases are only 60% of what they should be, making him realize that he isn't getting the full benefit of his leveling up. It's probably because he's playing on hell mode, but Alan says that it's still a moment for celebration. He has leveled up, and a bunch of his stats are going up as well. It's been 6 years since coming to this world, and Alan has finally hit his first level up. This is what the people of this world call passing the trial of the gods, and it feels amazing. Alan couldn't be happier, and he wonders if now is the time to tell his family the truth. Alan returns home, and Rodin is shocked to see that he was able to capture 2 Albaharans this time. Rodin seems to notice something, but there's no time to explain because Alan remembers that he has to spar with Krenna. As Alan gets beat up, he thinks about how after today's hunt, he has met his goal of capturing 10 owlbear herons. Once he dries the meat, his family will have enough to make it through the winter. The only thing left to do now is to trade for some firewood. There are a lot of owlbear herons around at this time of year, so Alan figures that he could try to hit level 3 by hunting 20 more. After their battle, Alan heads home to speak with his parents. He tells them to brace themselves and reveals that he heard an oracle from God back when he was 1 year old. Alan speaks using what he imagines the god's voice would sound like, and he says that the god told him that he would bless him with power and wisdom. His parents wonder what it means, so Alan explains that it means that he's smarter and stronger than the average person. However, the god also told him that he would face trials beyond what even 100 men could accomplish. His parents feel terrible about him having to endure such trials, and Roden realizes that Alan must have bested one of those trials earlier today. Roden knows this because the cut Alan had on his face from fighting the first bird has disappeared. Alan's parents wonder why his appraisal ceremony went so poorly, so Alan reveals that Elmia contacted him about that as well. The reason his attributes were ranked so low is because they take the slower progression of his trials into account. And the reason it said that he didn't have a talent is because his talent was simply too new to be recognized. Roden is delighted to hear that Alan does have a talent, but Alan tells him that he doesn't know what it is yet. Deep down, Alan can only apologize to his father because he can't say anything about being a summoner yet. Alan is worried that some people might get the wrong idea if they find out that he can summon and control creatures. Most importantly, Alan knows that he can never reveal that he was reincarnated. Theresia wishes that Alan would have told them sooner because she only now knows how hard he was working. The reason he's been throwing rocks at that tree and fighting the owlbear herons is so he could overcome the trials. Roden wonders what he will do now, so Alan explains that he wants to prove himself worthy by passing the trials. Roden promises to help in any way he can, so Alan thanks his parents for everything. Roden says that they should keep this all a secret so people don't call Alan a false prophet, but he still wants to tell Gerda. Alan says it's okay, and Roden's relieved because Gerda's always bragging about how Krenna is a sword god. A while later, Alan works hard as he prepares one of the birds he hunted. Gerda always knew that Alan was no ordinary kid, but him being blessed and tested by a god is really something special. Gerda takes Alan to trade meat for supplies for the first time, so Alan asks him to show him the ropes. Alan is bringing a bunch of the bird meat he prepared, and Gerda's bringing the meat he got from a boar hunt. Gerda says that hunting is a lot easier without commoners messing things up, so Alan wonders what is the difference between commoners and serfs. Besides their social status, commoners don't have to pay the 60% tax. Instead, they pay 3 gold coins for each adult and 1 for each kid every year. There is a way for serfs to become commoners, but they have to make a tribute of 10 gold coins per person in the family. Alan's family is about to get a new member, so they would have to pay 50 gold coins if they want to become commoners. When they arrive, Gerda declares that he's trading in 5 packs of boar meat. Alan decides to do just what he does, so he declares that he will be trading in 5 packs of owlbear heron meat. The trade is a great success, and now that Alan knows how bartering works, he plans to do a bit of market research for next time. As time passes, we see that Alan is confident enough to go on these trading trips by himself. Now he's asking about the prices of all sorts of stuff and deciding what he wants. Alan thinks about how much he can get for packs of meat, and he keeps everything in his notes. A single bundle of meat can get him a bag of salt, 4 momo fruits, and 4 days worth of firewood. He has also learned a lot about the currency here and how 1 gold coin is worth 100 silver coins. After some calculations, Alan determines that in order to save up for 50 gold coins, he would have to hunt 500 owlbear herons. This would only take 2 years, and Alan says that it will be a walk in the park for a hardcore gamer like him. Afterwards, Alan goes in search of a medicine that can recover magical power. That stuff is too fancy for the local market to carry, so Alan looks for some healing medicine instead. Alan is delighted to learn that he can draw things in his grimoire just by imagining them, so he copies down what some of the medicinal herbs look like. Alan wonders where the Muller's flower is, but their shop doesn't have that either. The shop owner explains that he only had one of those flowers, and he sold it to Gerda. Gerda got on his hands and knees to beg him to sell it, and he said that it was for Roden. Gerda wouldn't leave until the owner agreed to sell it, so Alan realizes that Gerda is a really good friend. The owner lost a lot of money on the deal, so Alan shows him what he brought. The owner thinks that Alan wants to trade it to him, but he's shocked when Alan reveals that it's a gift. Alan explains that Rodin is his father and that Flower saved his life. Later, Alan stops by a weapon shop and is surprised by how expensive everything is. Dagora wonders what Alan is doing outside his father's shop, but Alan says that he was just about to leave. Unfortunately, Dagora stops him and says that he can only leave if he agrees to be his minion. Alan fights back immediately, and he can see the fear in Dagora's eyes. He tells Dagora to grab whatever weapon he wants, and he will be waiting for him in this very spot. Dagora rushes off to get his weapon, and he tells the chief's son to watch Alan. Dagora returns soon after, and he's eager to teach Alan a lesson. Unfortunately, it doesn't go well for him, as Alan easily blocks all his attacks. Alan does admit that his attacks hit pretty hard, but Dagora doesn't compare to the 3-star power of Krenna. Alan wins their battle, and he declares that he will return one day to trade at his father's shop. Later, Rodin declares that he has finally made a full recovery. The next day, Alan battles Dagora again, and he reminds the kid that he has to try and anticipate his moves. The other kids are there as well, and Alan can tell that Krenna's taking it easy on Mash as she battles him. Alan's still proud of his little brother, and he even determines that Mash might have some talent as a spear user. Just then, Dagora tries a sneak attack, but Alan makes him pay over and over again. That night, we see that Alan has another sibling named Mayula. Just then, Rodin arrives and reveals that he has bad news. The chief wants them to raise the number of boars they deliver to the Baron from 10 to 15. To make this happen, the chief expects them to let commoners join the hunt again this year. Of course, they wanted to say no because of what happened last time, but this order came directly from the Baron. If they don't deliver 15 boars by winter this year, they're going to recruit serfs from elsewhere. More serfs in this village results in less land to go around for everyone else. This means that serfs who can't hunt might have their land taken away from them. This would hurt a lot of families, and it would change the very nature of Krenna village. To make things even worse, the chief expects them to hunt 20 boars next year. The only way to make that happen is for them to hunt way more often than usual. This would be very dangerous, but serfs like them have no right to disobey the Baron's orders. Alan speaks up and points out that there will never be an end to this. Even if they do manage to hunt 20 boars, they will just keep asking for more over the years. They will eventually have to recruit more serfs, so Alan says that the better choice would be to just let the commoners join. Gerda points out that the commoners are useless in battle, but Alan says that it will just have to be their job to make them useful. Alan reminds everyone that he has wisdom that was blessed to him by Elmia, but deep down he thinks about what he really means. He has spent countless hours across numerous games, making characters as strong as they could possibly be. This means that he knows how to integrate a newbie into a party so they can safely gain the necessary experience. Alan says that he has the knowledge to do this the right way, so he tells them to let him handle this. A while later, Rodin tells the other hunters that he's all better now. Alan has come along on this hunting trip, and Rodin explains that they will be following Alan's hunting strategy. It's his strategy, but Alan is only here to watch. Alan, of course, wanted to take part in the hunt, but his father refused to let him. It can't be helped, but the important thing is to train the newbies so they can become capable hunters. The hunters set out on the hunt, and Alan thinks about how it's been 7 years since he came to this world. This is his first time leaving the village, and it's a huge step forward for him. Their destination is called the White Dragon Mountains. There are many boars here at this time of year, and legend says that a mythical white dragon lives somewhere near the summit. The hunt begins, and Alan realizes just how terrifying a boar can be. The first group of hunters stop the boar in its tracks, and the second group arrives to deal even more damage. Alan watches closely, and he's pleased because everything's going as planned. The bait lures the boar in, and then the tank team holds it in place. Finally, after all that, the strike team attacks its vitals. This is the method that the hunters have used successfully over 10 years without having any talents. It's almost time for Alan's plan, so he tells the commoners to get ready. Alan thinks about how it was a mistake to count on the weak commoners to tank anything in the first place. The goal is to get them some experience, and they only need to attack the boar once to achieve that. With the boar unable to move around, the commoners are able to land their first attack without any fear. The hunters are successful in defeating the beast, and the commoners can already feel the power flowing through them. They can tell that they have passed the trial of the gods, and Alan is glad because it means they leveled up. The boars are C-rank monsters, so the commoners probably gained a ton of XP. Alan checks his own stats, but he didn't gain anything because he wasn't technically part of the party. Later, some of the hunters wonder if Alan will be coming on the next hunt. Alan confirms that he will, because he has gone on a couple already. Alan would like to wield a spear on the next hunt, so he asks the other hunters to put a good word in for him the next time they speak to Roden. Unfortunately, everyone knows that Roden doesn't want Alan to fight, so they can't do that. A butcher thanks the hunter for bringing him more meat to carve up, and Alan gets an idea. He shocks the butcher by showing him all the Albaherans that he has defeated. Alan explains that there are too many for him to handle, so he would like for the butcher to chop them up. Alan isn't asking him to do it for free, so he says that he will give the butcher 2 packs of meat for every bird he takes care of. The butcher couldn't be happier about the offer, so he gets to work. Alan thinks about how these birds are not part of his family's food reserves. Instead, he just needs the butcher to break them down so he can sell the meat. It's still Alan's goal to earn 50 gold coins so he can get his family out of serfdom. On the next hunt, Alan thinks about how things are going well. By gradually adding new people to the team, they will eventually have enough to make 2 groups. Then they will be able to double the amount of boars they can hunt. Just then the hunt begins, just like the first one did. The hunters lock the boar in place, and Gerda calls on the newbies to land their attack. The new guys are way more confident now, and they help bring down the beast. They can feel that they just completed another trial of the gods, and they feel a lot stronger. Alan takes a look at his grimoire, and he's delighted to see that he gained a bunch of experience points, and he even leveled up. This happened because Alan started this hunt with a secret plan. Just before the hunters stopped the boar, Alan summoned Denka. Thankfully, his creatures can be summoned to any location that he marks by sight within a 50-meter radius. As long as one of his creatures are attacked, it's enough to count Alan as a participant in the battle. Denka got crushed by the boar, so Alan got the experience points for being in the fight. He had to sacrifice one of his creatures, but Alan's willing to do whatever it takes to level up as a hardcore gamer. After celebrating the new year at the chief's house, Alan and Krenna return home. They were given gifts, and Alan wonders if there's supposed to be rewards for meeting the 15 boar quota last year. Alan then celebrates the new year with his family, and they enjoy a feast. Roden says that they should have no problem reaching this year's 20 boar quota, and it's all thanks to Alan and his plan to train the newbies. The guys notice that Alan has brought some celebratory liquor, and Alan explains that it's from the chief. The guys are ready to really celebrate, and Alan thinks about how he has his father right where he wants him. Alan tells Mash that they should do some more spear training. Krenna wants to join them, but Alan says that they need to focus on nourishing Mash's talent. He explains that Mash has a lot of potential as a spear user, and the fathers wonder what he means. They are still more interested in drinking the liquor, but Alan points out that the chief gave it to him. He offers to give it to them, but only if they beat him in a contest. If they win, they get the liquor, but if Alan wins, he wants to be able to wield a spear during every boar hunt this year. Roden agrees to the terms, so the guys wonder what this contest will be. Alan surprises them when he reveals that they will be having an arm wrestling competition. Gerda declares that he won't go easy on him, and he will be Alan's first opponent. Alan is ready though, as he stocked his inventory full of Fido cards just for this. This means that all his buffs are in attack power right now. Besides that, Alan is now level 6, so he is sure that he will win. The match begins, and Gerda is completely caught off guard by Alan's power. Alan then shocks everyone as he slams Gerda's hand onto the table. It was much closer than he thought it would be, and he determines that Gerda's attack stat must be somewhere between 150 and 200. It's Roden's turn next, and he can't believe that Alan has gotten to the age where he's already challenging him. Alan's ready for everyone to start seeing him as an adult, and he knows that it will take a lot of work. He will have to work harder than anyone, and it all starts with raising his stats by leveling up. Their match begins, and Roden's strength is obvious as his giant bicep nearly explodes. This match is quite the struggle, and Roden eventually wins. Alan has no choice but to accept his loss, and he determines that Roden's attack stat has to be well over 300. As the fathers enjoy their victory, Alan says that Gerda's attack power is probably a D rank, and Roden's is more like a C rank. Alan lost the contest, but he was at least able to get a reference for how strong the people playing on normal mode can get. Roden acknowledges that Alan's pretty strong, but he still won't let him hunt any boars until he has what it takes to beat him. Alan agrees to wait, but he plans to hold his father to his promise. A while later, Alan's summon ability levels up a bit more. His stats show that he has now unlocked E-rank creatures and even a new creature type. He will have to experiment with fusing to see what type it is, but he has way more magic power now, and he doesn't have to worry about running out. Alan explains that the amount of buffs that summon creatures provide scale by their level. Alan has received 10 more slots in his inventory, so he should get a significant boost if he fills it with 40 E-rank cards. Just then, Alan notices a skill called Storage, and he sees a strange hole in his grimoire. Alan tries putting some stuff in it, and he finds that it seems almost bottomless. He's able to retrieve the things he puts in it, and he can even call up a mental image of the items that he has stored. After some experimenting, Alan learns that he can put anything in this storage hole as long as it fits. There isn't even a limit to how much he can put inside, so it kind of feels like cheating. A major aspect of games is how many items the player can hold, so Alan can only wonder why this game is giving him a god tier storage skill. What's most concerning to him is the timing. Usually in video games, items are obtained around the time that they become necessary. Receiving a god tier item like this means that something big is about to happen. The next day, Alan does some more experimenting. He tries to create his new E-rank creatures, but something is wrong. His grimoire explains that he doesn't have enough E-rank magic stones, which means that creating E-rank stuff requires items. Luckily, Alan has been keeping a secret stash with some of his valuables. Aside from all the money he's been saving, Alan has some magic stones from some horned rabbits that wandered into the village. Alan tries summoning with this stone, but it once again says that he doesn't have enough. He tries putting the magic stone in his storage, and it finally works. Alan realizes that this is what the storage is for, and he sees that he was able to summon an E-rank butterfly. This thing is much bigger than he expected, and he fears that his mother's going to see it. Luckily, she doesn't notice, so Alan celebrates with his new creature. Moments later, Alan finds himself face to face with the terrifying creature, but it turns out that he was just scared by his own summon. This terrifying beast is an E-rank saber-toothed tiger, and it's now the strongest creature Alan can summon. A look at its stats reveals that its buffs increase Alan's stats by 10. That's more than double what the F ranks do, and Alan names the tiger Tama. Alan tries to fuse the tiger with the butterfly, but nothing happens. He remembers to store the magic stone first, and it works again. Fusing the tiger and the butterfly results in an E-rank bird. Alan determines that he will need a lot more magic stones, which means he will have to find more rabbits. Unfortunately, Rodin explains that they created a ditch around the village to protect them from the dangerous horned rabbits. That's not good for Alan, so he tries to think of a plan. The next day, Alan says that he heard Palomas was pretty smart, so he asks the kid what he knows about magic stones. Magic stones are small gems that are found near the hearts of monsters. They are mostly used to power magic tools, and there are all sorts of magic tools in the royal capital. D and C rank stones can be really valuable, but E rank stones are basically garbage. The E rank ones can be found just lying around on the ground, so Palomas finds one. Alan manages to gather a bunch of them from around the village, and he uses them to create all the E rank summons that he has available. It's time to find out what kind of abilities they have, but things take a dangerous turn. A wild boar attacks Alan out of nowhere, and he gets severely injured. Luckily, his creature named Beansy is there, and it heals him. Alan calls on Papillon, and he uses its ability to make the boar drowsy. Alan then summons Tama, and the ferocious tiger deals massive damage. Alan celebrates after defeating the boar, but it's too soon because there's another one. Alan's really in trouble now, but his creature named Wally comes out of nowhere to protect him. The beast is knocked out from slamming into Wally, so Alan can finally celebrate. Just then, Alan snaps out of it, and he wonders if that was all just a dream. He thinks about how it's been 7 years, and he has always wondered how a summoner is supposed to play. Other games have walkthroughs for this kind of stuff, but that's not an option for him. In this world, Alan will have to figure out how to tap into a summoner's full potential all by himself. Alan has come to realize that each summon type is designed to fulfill a specific role in battle. Insect types are for applying buffs, while beast types are for offense. Bird types are for gathering and relaying intel, while grass types are for healing. Finally, the last type is the stone type, and they are for defense. These creatures enable Alan to fulfill every role of a typical party all by himself. This is what makes being a summoner so great, and Alan realizes why he received the god tier storage skill at this very moment. It's because he will need tons of magic stones, and he wouldn't be able to just walk around with them in his pocket. Alan then acknowledges what his powers are all about. He has an unrivaled army of creatures at his disposal that can overcome any situation. It's the ultimate power that makes the summoner stronger than even the demon lord. A while later, the chief brings Rhoda and Gerda to speak with him. The Baron will be paying them a visit next month, and he has expressed interest in observing a boar hunt firsthand. Gerda is insulted by the Baron's demands because first he ordered for an unreasonable amount of boars, and now he wants a show. Rhoda doesn't have a problem with this, but he wants to know why Alan was asked to be here. The chief explains that they need someone to serve as a tour guide for the Baron during his stay, and he has chosen Alan. Gerda points out that the chief could have chosen his own son, but everyone knows that Palomas isn't suited for the job. The chief heard that last year's hunts were successful because of Alan's strategy, so he's sure that our hero can handle this important job. Alan couldn't care less about the Baron, but he knows that this might help him get his family out of serfdom. There's one ticket to rising the social ladder, and if done correctly, the Baron can give people commoner status. This would be much easier than trying to save up 50 gold, so Alan says that he will do it. The Baron arrives soon after, and we learn that his name is Granville, and his daughter's name is Cecil. Granville thanks the chief because he's done a great job growing the village. He also apologizes because he knows that asking for more boar meat put a huge burden on them. He wouldn't have asked for so much, but it was a direct request from the king. The chief is stunned to hear this, but Granville explains that the real person to blame is Viscount Carnal. He calls Carnal a scoundrel because he was the one that brought up the boar hunts in front of the king. After Granville calms down, dinner is served. He's amazed by how delicious the food is, and Cecil's also impressed. Granville's eager to hear what kind of meat this is, so Alan apologizes for interrupting and reveals that it's Albaharan. This meat is from an Albaharan that Alan hunted the day before because he wanted to give them the freshest ingredients. Alan explains that this dish used all the meat from the Albaharan and it was flavored with a blend of herbs. Granville's amazed by the preparation, so he wonders if this kid is the chief's son. Zenoff recognizes Alan as the son of Roden the boar hunter, and Alan introduces himself to the Baron. Granville wonders if his father used to be a knight, but the chief reveals that Alan actually comes from a family of serfs. Cecil is horrified to hear this, and she can't believe that the chief allowed a serf into his home. Granville reminds her that serfs are fair members of their country, so she shouldn't treat them like animals. Cecil apologizes to her father, but she clearly doesn't like Alan because of his serfdom. Things get really serious as Granville hopes that Alan is ready to explain the finer details to him during tomorrow's hunt. Alan is ready, so Granville points out that hunting 20 boars in 1 year is a difficult goal. If it proves to be too difficult, then Zenoff Knights will have to take over the hunts. Cecil explains that she wanted to come along because she wants to see a great boar up close. The only thing she would find better is if the Knights were the ones to take it down. Granville explains that once the Knights are shown the fundamentals, they can handle the responsibility of hunting. Alan doesn't like how they're so casual about taking this job from them, so he says that 20 boars is an easy number. He declares that they will have no problems meeting the quota, and their performance tomorrow will surely convince them. The hunt begins the next day, so Alan takes everyone to a watchtower. This is where they will be able to see all the action, and he has everyone make their way to the top. The hunters arrive soon after, and Zenoff is impressed to see that some of them are now wearing armor. Alan explains that they made good use of the boars from last year, and they didn't let anything go to waste. The armor the hunters are wearing was forged from leftover pelts, bones, and fangs. Some of the hunters break off from the rest of the group, so Alan explains that their job is to lure boars into the hunting grounds. Speed is a key factor, so they are lightly equipped. Alan asks the spectators to be patient because it might take some time to lure the boars. During this moment, Zenoff would like to know how the Sword Lord Krenna is doing. Alan explains that she's doing great and improving every day. Zenoff says that a tutor will be dispatched to the village soon to help her study for the academy entrance exam. Just then, the hunters rush back to the group as they have lured a boar. The other hunters use a couple walls to stop the beast, and Alan explains that they start their attack by boxing it in. The large shields they are using are made from 2 layers of the toughest part of the boar hide. Roden tells the strike team that it's their turn, and then he sends in the long spear team. Alan explains that the long spear team consists of the least experienced members that joined last year. The frontliners with the toughest job are the ones wearing armor, so the guys are very impressed. Alan explains that the armor also covers their backs to prevent injury if one of the long spear users misses their target. The hunters land the fatal blow, and they celebrate after a successful hunt. Zenov says that these guys are not knights, but they are definitely worthy of being called warriors. Granville agrees, but something happens soon after. The other hunters come running out of the forest, and Zenov is stunned to see that they have lured 2 boars at once. This is way too dangerous, so he tells the knights to prepare to help. Alan calmly tells them that there's no need to panic, because the hunting team is trained to deal with these situations. Zenov fears that they're in danger, but Alan asks for them to just let the hunters handle it. Down below, Rodin tells his men to remember their training. They split into groups of 2, and they stop the boars in their tracks. Alan says that every hunter worth their salt knows that they must eliminate whatever they lure. Alan thinks about how over the past 10 years, the hunters struggled to do this. It was mainly due to their lack of armor, and that was never their fault. They work really hard to hunt these boars, but they end up having to pay 60% of it because of the tax. Then the rest of it has to be exchanged for daily necessities. They were hardly left with anything after, so spears were the only thing they could afford to upgrade. The best solution to this was to master the most efficient hunting strategy. That way, even with little money, they would be able to hunt better and gradually upgrade their equipment. The 2 groups work with incredible efficiency, and the 2 newest boars are taken down. That's 3 boars in one day, and Alan's relieved that it went well. Granville says that this only leaves 17 boars for them to hunt for the rest of the year, but Alan says that he's wrong. 7 boars were hunted before this, so there are only 10 left. Alan is sure that the quota will be met in the next month or so, and the guys are shocked. It's clear now that the knights won't be needed, and Alan reveals that the hunters have a couple of requests. The first request is for permission to make 2 more of the shield walls. This is so they can hunt even more boars, so Granville allows it. The second request is to produce goods not available in the village. More specifically, Alan says that they want to produce liquor. They would like permission to trade in liquor and allow its distribution among the serfs. Granville can't understand why, so Alan explains their thought process. As more and more boars are hunted, there is a concern that the abundance of meat will reduce its value in the village. Exchanging the meat for imported liquor instead will help prevent the market crash. They are choosing liquor specifically because it will help keep morale high for the hunters who are constantly risking their lives. Zenov thinks it's a great idea, so Granville says that he will consider it. Granville tells Alan that he did a splendid job today, and they prepare to leave. Cecil still hates our hero, so she tells him not to let her father's praise go to his head. Later, Granville meets with the leaders of the hunting group. They have shown him what they're capable of, and he commends them on their amazing hunting skills. He says that their accomplishments deserve to be rewarded, and Alan hopes that he will make them commoners. Alan gets exactly what he wants, as Granville declares that the families of Gerda and Rodin will be given commoner status. The guys are stunned, and they thank the Baron. No one is happier than Alan, because this means that he will finally be able to go hunting outside the village limits. Alan has dreamt about this countless times, and he says that his first stop will be the White Dragon Mountains, so he can go dragon hunting. Granville isn't done, as he declares that he will grant the same status to anyone that has joined their hunts in the past 10 years. Granville then says that he can now return home, knowing that things are being handled. Just then, he remembers that there's one more thing he had to say. He explains that the king wants to promote Kerna village as a shining example to the rest of the kingdom. To help accomplish this, he wants to know about the history behind the hunts. Alan doesn't even know about the history, and the question bothers Rodin for some reason. Gerda explains to everyone that it's actually a sore subject for Rodin. Gerda will have to be the one to tell the story, so Granville allows it. Gerda says that it all started 13 years ago. About 100 serfs from nearby villages relocated here to help develop the land. Unfortunately, one day, a great boar came out of nowhere and attacked them. The beast was unstoppable, and it devoured most of the wheat and potatoes that they had set aside for the winter. These guys were already struggling in their old villages, so returning home was not an option. That was when Rodin spoke up and proposed that they hunt the boars for meat. Back then, they didn't have any of the weapons, armor, or knowledge that they have now. Despite that, they united to go hunting with pickaxes, and they managed to defeat one boar. Granville thinks that this is a story to be proud of, but Gerda reveals that they lost a close friend in the process. Gerda tried to tell Rodin that it wasn't his fault, but Rodin refuses to listen. Alan is stunned to learn about this, and now it makes sense why his father sacrificed himself to protect a commoner. Granville points out that the village could have never come this far without Rodin's actions. He really wants to make this clear, so he decides to give one more reward. He tells Rodin that he can ask for anything he wants, so Rodin is shocked. Alan couldn't be happier for his father, so he says that he should ask for some liquor. Rodin knows exactly what he wants to ask for, so he tells Granville that he would like for Alan to be able to work at the Granville estate. Granville's butler has no problems with it, because Alan seems like a pretty clever kid. Alan is horrified by this idea though, because it will ruin his dream of hunting legendary dragons. Granville has made his decision, so he appoints Alan to be a servant of his family. Rodin couldn't be more honored, but Cecil is horrified. Just the idea of having a serf in the house makes her sick, but Sebas points out that Alan is a commoner now. Alan wants to get himself out of this mess, so he tries to think of an excuse. He sees how happy this makes his father though, so he just accepts it, and says that he looks forward to serving Granville's family. A while later, Alan prepares to say goodbye to his family. His mother is very proud of him, but the entire family is sad to see him go. Krenna is sad as well, so Alan says that they should have one more duel before he leaves. Alan declares that he's the servant to Granville, and Krenna announces that she's called Krenna the Fierce. The two of them battle it out just like they always do, and everyone says that this is a great way to say goodbye. They're all shocked, because this is the first time that they have ever seen Alan overpower Krenna. This is because Alan used nearly all the magic stones he had stocked up, and created 20 copies of his creature named Hawkins. He put all those stats into agility, and it has made him a much better fighter. Alan then thinks about how when Krenna turns 12 years old, she will go to study at the academy. Then she will go into the royal service, which means that they may never see each other again. Their battle comes to an end, and Krenna is stunned because this is the first time she's ever lost. The humble Alan says that this is a draw, so they will have to settle this in the future. Alan then says goodbye to his family, and he tells Mash that he will have to be the one to protect their mom from now on. Mash is up to the task, so Alan then says goodbye to Miula. Alan says goodbye to Gerda's family as well, and he notices that the other kids are watching nearby. Dagora steps up next, and he gives Alan a dagger. He tells Alan that he can never say that he didn't give him anything, and he runs off. Alan then leaves with his parents, and everyone watches him for the last time. Rodin explains that being a servant to the Baron is only the first step for Alan. If he continues to work hard, Rodin is sure that Alan will go places. Alan then says his final goodbye to his parents, and he sets off on his new adventure. As he leaves with the Baron, Alan says goodbye to everyone, and he sheds a tear. Alan starts his first day of work, and he's amazed by how huge the Granville estate is. His first task is to act as a step stool for Cecil so she can pick some fruit. Cecil is furious because he isn't doing it right, so he tells her to get on his shoulders instead. The two finally succeed in getting some fruit, but Cecil says that it tastes terrible. Just then, Alan is stunned out of his mind as a giant airship flies above them. Cecil calls him a fool because this thing is actually a magic ship. Alan has never seen anything like this before, but he can't enjoy it, as Cecil tells him to go to the market to get some good fruit. A few days later, Alan is delighted to wake up to the smell of Appo's ability. After inhaling the scent, Alan's magic power recovery will be much faster for the next 6 hours. It's time for breakfast, so Alan says good morning to the head servant named Rickle. Rickle wonders if Alan is getting along with Cecil, but Alan can't really say. Rickle can tell that it hasn't been easy, and he points out that Cecil wouldn't be so hard on him if he were a hall boy. Alan is a manservant, but he doesn't even know what the difference is. Rickle explains that servants are split into ranks. There are senior rank servants like head chef and butler, and lower rank servants like manservant and gardener. Their rank separates them, but they're still considered part of the family. Hall boys, on the other hand, are only occasional helpers, and they don't count as members of the family. Alan is shocked to learn that servants are considered family here, so it makes sense why his father was so happy that he got the job. The Baron was generous enough to make him part of the family, so Alan says that he should be grateful. After serving the family their breakfast, the Baron's wife says that Alan is picking up the basics at an incredible speed. Alan says that he owes it all to the seniors teaching him, and she's delighted by his answer. His manners are impressive for a serf, and the Baron points out that Alan is also talentless. Alan is surprised to hear this, because it means the Baron did some research on him. Cecil's delighted to hear that Alan is talentless, because he's nothing like her. She is filled with talent, because she is a wizardess. Alan is impressed because Wizardess is a 2-star talent. Cecil says that her brother Mihai is a swordsman, but the Baron must remind her not to brag. Her other brother Thomas can't stop crying because he's the only sibling without a talent. Thomas would like to go to Academy City like Mihai, but the Baron says that's impossible. The Academy City is only for those with talent. The Baron points out that he also lacks a talent, which is why he had to attend the Nobles College instead of the Academy. Later, Alan has the rest of the day off, so he heads into town. This place is like a whole new world to him because everything's so different from the village. Alan is amazed when he finds the Adventurers Guild, so he rushes inside. Alan says that he would like to become an adventurer, but he's declined. Alan is only 8 years old, and you have to be 12 or older to register as an adventurer. Alan is horrified to hear this news because this is his real goal. He's doing the job as a manservant out of respect for his father, but he refuses to give up on monster hunting. Alan then goes to the job board and looks at all the bounties. There are bounties for D-rank goblins and C-rank orcs. A guy tells him that this isn't a place for kids, so Alan says that he was just leaving. Alan, however, can't help but wonder why the bounties don't have spawning locations on them. The guy explains that it's because these monsters can be found anywhere. He points out that he isn't Alan's teacher, but Alan just wants to know how the monsters are ranked. The adventurer explains that monster ranks go up the further they are from the town. That is why the higher ranked monsters live near the White Dragon Mountains. Just then, Alan spots the B-rank monster called Murder Gulch. It's a ferocious beast, and it's the monster MASH was named after. It's worth a lot of money, so Alan wonders why no one has hunted it yet. The adventurer explains that it's too dangerous, so people are just leaving it for the knights. Alan then sees the bounty for the White Dragon, and he can tell that the bounty has been there for a really long time. The guy explains that it's the most dangerous monster, so no one has been able to hunt it. However, there's some very valuable mithril in that area, so some people are itching to mine it. No one has been successful, so the reward for hunting the dragon has just been getting higher and higher over the decades. Just then, the guy named Raven says hi to some of his friends. Alan thanks Raven for helping him, and he leaves to start his new goal. He refuses to let his day off go to waste, so he sets out on an adventure. A guard tells him to stop, but Alan shows him that he has a travel permit. The guard apologizes because he didn't realize that Alan had the crest of the Granville family. This thing is like a free pass, so the guard opens the gate. The guy tries to tell Alan that he should have a guard go with him, but it's too late. Alan is now free to hunt any monster he wants, and he has been waiting 8 years for this moment. Alan is no fool though, as he knows that he shouldn't go too far from the village. He's not ready for the most powerful monsters, so he's going to aim for the D-rank ones. To start his hunt, Alan decides to test the capabilities of his summoned creatures. He tests Hawkins to see how well he listens, and the bird does exactly what he says. Hawkins has 150 intelligence right now, and that makes him smart enough to understand Alan's orders. Alan didn't encounter any monsters on his way here, which makes it clear that he will have to search for them. Alan enlists several Hawkins for this job, so he tells them to use their Hawkeye skill to find nearby monsters. Tama's the next to be tested, but the giant tiger doesn't listen so well, and it just rolls around on the ground. It only has 28 intelligence, but Alan says it's okay. Just then, Hawkins reveals that it found something nearby. It's a group of goblins, so Alan summons several Tamas. The goblins seem surprised at first, and Alan reveals that he has summoned even more tigers. He has 10 of them now, so Alan tells them to attack. The fight is one-sided at first, but eventually the goblins start fighting back. Alan then summons Papillon and uses its powder ability to put the monsters to sleep. The battle is over soon after, and Alan's delighted to see that defeating 5 goblins earned him 1,000 experience points. One goblin doesn't give as much as a great boar, but they take less time to beat. Alan takes the magic stones from the monsters and tells Hawkins to find more goblins. Hours pass, and Alan wipes out several more goblins. At the end of the day, Alan says that he earned a whopping 16,000 XP. He even leveled up 2 times, and he says that this was the best day ever. Thanks to this adventure, Alan has learned a bit more about magic stones. D-rank magic stones can't be used to create E-rank summoned creatures. Alan says that it's time to keep farming, and he instructs Hawkins to go searching again. The birds don't want to, so Alan tries to tell them that the night is still young. Unfortunately, it becomes clear that Hawkins can't see so well at night. This is really bad news because Alan was counting on them to lead him back to the town. Alan screams in terror as he's now lost in the woods. A month later, we find Alan doing some shopping. He just bought some iron balls because he wanted something sturdier than the rocks he was throwing before. Alan has gone monster hunting 4 times since the last time we saw him, and he's now level 12. He has been farming easy mobs for XP while collecting better equipment. When he returns home, Alan is told that the Baron would like to speak with him. The Baron has been told that Alan has been doing a great job as a servant. The Baron is pleased with this, but he demands to know what Alan has been doing on his time off. Alan always leaves bright and early and returns well after dark. Of course, the Baron says that Alan is free to spend his time however he wants, but he would still like to have an idea of what he's doing. Alan determines that he must be honest, so he reveals that he's been monster hunting. The Baron can only wonder why, so Alan reminds him that he's the son of Rodin the boar hunter. He declares that hunting is in his blood, and Alan even surprises himself. The Baron agrees that he can't help what's in his nature, so he accepts Alan's answer. The butler wonders what Alan's been doing with the horned rabbits he's been hunting, but Alan thinks about how he's been hunting much stronger monsters. Of course, they probably don't know that, and they just think that he's been hunting E-ranks. The butler explains that they will buy the rabbit meat from Alan for 1 silver coin per bundle. Alan couldn't be happier because this means he can hunt openly and make money off the meat. Alan doesn't waste any time and he accepts the offer. 6 months later, we see that Alan is hunting it again. His goal today is to hunt at least 100 goblins. Hawkins alerts Alan, but Alan says that he will continue hunting after he's done eating. Hawkins is acting weird, so Alan determines that it must be urgent. He gets a bit worried because they're going too far away, but he sees what Hawkins was talking about. Raven is in really bad shape, and his team is doing their best to keep him alive. The goblins rush in to finish the job, but Alan manages to stop them just in time. Raven's in much worse shape than Alan thought, and the goblins aren't going down. Alan can't use his summons in front of the adventurers, so he will have to get his hands dirty. He tells one of the girls to back him up, and he charges in with his dagger. As he fights, Alan thinks about how he's currently level 12. Thanks to the summon buffs, his attack and agility are over 300. This means that he can take down D-rank monsters, even without his creatures. They manage to win the fight, but Raven's life is fading away. Their healer is out of magic power, and the girls begin to lose hope. Alan determines that Raven won't make the trip back to town, but he has some healing herbs they can try. Alan keeps his grimoire hidden, and he pulls out the Leaf of Life. He made it using Beansy's ability, and he's pretty sure that it heals HP. Alan gives it a try, and the girls are stunned when the leaf heals Raven. Everyone's in disbelief because his wound is completely gone, and Raven remembers Alan from the guild. Alan uses the leaf to heal the girls too, but they still can't believe it. This is obviously a very strong healing item, and Alan just used 2 of them. Alan tells him not to worry about it, and he thinks about how it's not really that big of a deal. Alan gets ready to leave, but Raven wants to pay him back for saving his life. Alan just wants to keep farming so he can reach his daily goal, so he comes up with an idea. He tells the group that if they really want to pay him back, then they shouldn't tell anyone about what he did. The group agrees, so Alan comes up with another idea. He says that he's collecting magic stones, so he asks them to gather 100 E-rank ones for him. They agree to this as well, and they say that it will take them about a week. Afterwards, Alan thinks about how it took more than a month for his dad to heal from his wound. However, because of the Leaf of Life, Raven healed almost immediately. Alan looks at his stats and sees that he only earned 160 XP for each goblin in that last battle. That's pretty bad, considering it's only 80% of what he gets when he farms solo. Alan summons Hawkins, and he scolds the birds for disobeying his orders. He told it to search for monsters in a short range, but Hawkins took him really far away. Alan is surprised though, when it becomes clear that Hawkins was trying to save the adventurers. Alan was under the impression that his summons were just for providing buffs and using abilities. It's becoming more obvious, however, that the summons have feelings. Hawkins prioritized his own urge to rescue the adventurers over Alan's orders. Alan can't believe it, and he says that the game devs really made some cool creatures. He apologizes to Hawkins and says that he's glad to have the bird on his team. Back home, Alan helps Cecil find a jar of jam. He wonders what she needs it for, and she explains that she wants to make cookies. Alan is then shocked when she reveals that her brother Mihai is coming to visit. Sometime later, the Granville family enjoys dinner, and Zenoff can only wonder what kind of meat they're eating. It's absolutely delicious, and Cecil explains that it's a horned rabbit that Alan hunted. Zenoff says that this is expected from Rodin's son, and he reveals that Krenna Village has already met their hunting quota for the year. Thomas is surprised to hear this, and he wonders why they haven't eaten any great boar recently. Alan wonders this as well, and he determines that it all must have been sent to the royal capital. Thomas tells Alan that he should hunt a white deer next, but his mother says that he's asking for too much. She is surprised though when Alan says that it won't be a problem. White deer are C-rank monsters just like great boars, and Alan loves a challenge. The hunt begins soon after, as Hawkins reveals that there's a white deer nearby. Alan has seen them from a distance before, but they're huge up close. He summons Hopper so they can use their provoke skill, and they get the attention of the deer. Alan has them alternate between taunting and disappearing, so they can lure the deer to a certain location. His plan works perfectly, as he manages to catch the deer in a trap he set up. Back at the house, all the guards urgently prepare for a battle, as a monster has arrived at the front gate. The monster wants to speak with Thomas, and all the guards are shocked to see that it can speak. They're even more surprised when the voice turns out to be Alan. Thomas is delighted to see that Alan got the deer for them, because now they will have something special to serve at their New Year's party. Thomas thanks our hero, and Alan thinks about how it was a lot of work. He calls the deer an oversized pain in the butt, and he says that it isn't worth the 2,500 experience points that it gives. Granville's still in shock, and he wonders if Alan's really talentless. Alan supposedly doesn't have any powers, but Granville can't understand how an 8-year-old can hunt a C-rank monster. Something must be going on, so he tells Sebas to investigate. That night, Sebas tells Alan that they have decided to assign him to a new position. After seeing what he's capable of, they want Alan to be a huntsman. He then explains that huntsmen have 2 duties. First is hunting monsters to provide food for the family. Second is rescuing townfolk from any monster attacks. Alan can't believe his ears, because this means he can just go hunting for monsters every day and call it work. Sebas makes it even better, as he explains that they aren't asking him to do it for free. Alan will receive 100 silver coins, which is double his current monthly wage. This means that they will give Alan a fixed salary instead of paying per monster like they were before. Alan isn't sure about this because just one white deer is worth at least 100 silver coins on its own. This is his dream job though, so he accepts the decision. All he will have to do is hunt enough to feed the family, then he will be free to spend the rest of his time farming goblins. Alan can't wait to get started, so he gladly takes on the title of huntsman. Unfortunately, Sebas also explains that Alan won't be hunting every day. In between his new job, he will still have to continue being Cecil's servant. He will only be hunting once a week, and Alan can't hide his disappointment. Sebas says that they can take the title back, but Alan doesn't want that. He doesn't want to mess up this opportunity, so he declares that he will carry out all his duties. On New Year's Day, everyone watches the giant magic ship. It's much bigger up close, and Alan determines that it must be powered by magic stones. Mihai arrives on the ship, and he greets his younger sister. Cecil is upset because he was supposed to visit during summer, so he apologizes for being so busy. Alan thinks about how Mihai is only 14 years old, but he looks much older than that. Alan offers to take Mihai's bags, and he introduces himself as the family's new servant. Cecil points out that Alan is also serving as a huntsman, and Mihai is impressed. Having that responsibility at such a young age is unheard of, so Mihai determines that Alan must be very gifted. Mihai gives Cecil a souvenir, and she promises to cherish it forever. After they leave, Alan says that he hopes that his family's doing well. Sometime later, Alan finishes hunting a monster and says that he just filled his quota. He impresses everyone with another big haul of food because Alan even hunted the toad that the chef requested. The head chef couldn't be more pleased, as he says that this meal will surely put a smile on Mihai's face. Alan is told that Mihai and Captain Zenoff are having a duel right now, so he goes to watch. Mihai's more than holding his own, and this is the first time Alan has seen Zenoff use his sword. Their duel ends, and Zenoff says that Mihai's skills have gotten much sharper. Everyone's really impressed when they see the haul Alan just brought, and Mihai gets an idea. Alan is obviously very talented, so he would like to spar with him. Granville allows it, so Zenov gives Alan his sword. Alan is amazed by the weapon because it's made with mithril. Alan hasn't sparred with anyone since he left Krena village, and his stats are currently spec'd out for hunting. He won't be able to show his true fighting skills, but hunting so much recently raised his level from 13 to 20. Even with his stats spec'd out for hunting, Alan is sure that he can win. Their duel begins, and Alan is immediately caught off guard by how talented Mihai is. This guy hits like a truck, so Alan determines that he will have to use his speed to win. Mihai's even faster than him though, so the battle proves to be much tougher than he expected. Mihai's mother gets really worried, but Granville tells her that there's no need. Mihai has spent a whole year undergoing training in the renowned academy. The academy is home to the greatest teachers, so there's no chance that Mihai loses to someone without that kind of experience. Granville ends up being correct, as Mihai easily wins the duel. Mihai is still impressed by Alan, and it's clear why he was made a manservant at such a young age. Alan realizes now that Mihai's on a whole nother level, and he never stood a chance. Mihai's siblings wonder how he got so strong, so he reveals that it's because he cleared a dungeon over the summer. He needed to clear it, otherwise he would have been expelled. Alan really looks up to Mihai because clearing a dungeon sounds really cool. Life at the academy is pretty tough, but Mihai says it's all worth it. As an example, he explains that he learned swordsmanship from a legendary sword lord. Alan then does some calculations while factoring in how Mihai trained with sword lords and cleared dungeons. Mihai being on normal mode means he progresses 100 times faster than Alan does because he's on hell mode. Mihai is simply the result of someone with talent dedicating a whole year to leveling up. Mihai won't be visiting for another year, so Alan says that they should spar again when he comes back. Mihai agrees, but only as long as Alan takes care of Cecil. Deep down, Alan hates the idea of serving Cecil for the rest of his life. He's trying to rise the ranks and make a name for himself so he can go out hunting every day. Alan determines that he must find a way to quit this job in a way that won't bring shame to his father. A few days later, Mihai leaves to return to the academy. The academy is very prestigious, and Alan thinks about how Krena and Cecil will be going there. Dungeons sound like a lot of fun, so Alan wishes that he could clear one. Sometime later, a viscount named Carnal arrives to see Granville. Alan serves the guy his meal, and he thinks about what Rickle told him. Carnal is in charge of the land on the other side of the White Dragon Mountains. He's a pretty big deal, because viscounts are one rank higher in social status over barons. Rickle doesn't know what he's doing here, but he heard that Carnal took a magic ship all the way from the royal capital just to drop by. Rickle told Alan to be careful, because there's always been bad blood between the Granvilles and the Carnals. Carnal's amazed by the delicious food, and he wonders if this is the famous great boar meat that he heard of. Granville says that it is, but Alan thinks about how Granville knows that this is just rabbit meat. Alan just now remembers that Carnal was the guy that really upset Granville. He was the one that called attention to the boar hunts when they were in front of the king. Carnal opened his big mouth and caused a fuss over the boar meat quota. Because of this, all the boar meat now has to go to the royal capital. Alan doesn't like this guy because his territory is already really well off and he won't stop bothering others. Rickle explained to Alan earlier that the White Dragon Mountains are filled with mithril deposits. There are multiple mines in both territories, but because the White Dragon made its nest on this side, Granville can't access any of it. Because of this, Granville's territory is going through an economic downturn. Thankfully, the White Dragon is pretty fickle, so it switches its home to the other side every 100 years. Eventually, Carnal reveals why he came. A few days ago, his youngest daughter underwent the appraisal ceremony, and he came to share the results. Alan remembers that Mash did the same thing, and he assumes that he got the spear user talent. As for Carnal's daughter, it turns out that she is talentless. He's really happy about it for some reason, but it doesn't make sense to Alan. The guys go back and forth insulting each other by pointing out which of their children have talents. Alan can't understand why they're acting like it's a bad thing, because this is completely different from how things are back in the village. Carnal just came to rub that in Granville's face, so he leaves soon after. A few months later, we see that Alan is now 9 years old. He's been doing tons of hunting, and he's been thinking about going further away from the town. Alan doesn't know much about it, so he turns to Raven and his friends to ask for advice. He wants to know more about C-rank monsters, and this surprises the adventurers. Alan thinks about how he's taken down over 10,000 goblins, and there are hardly any left to hunt. He has also leveled up enough to where D-rank monsters won't cut it anymore. Raven is really worried because if he just makes one mistake against a C-rank, it will cost him his life. The girls come up with an idea, and they say that they should talk about it while shopping for equipment. The girls make some suggestions about what Alan should get, but he hates them. They settle on a cape for him to wear, and Alan thinks about how much he loves gaming. One of the things he likes the most is getting new pieces of armor over time. Just then Hawkins arrives, and Alan determines that it must have found him a C-rank monster. It's a big orc, and Alan immediately attacks it with his Tamas. They manage to do some damage, but the orc is really strong. Alan has his beast use their final attack, and he gets 1500 experience points for defeating the orc. This thing was pretty tough, so it will make a good monster to farm for more level ups. Alan even got a C-rank stone for his efforts, and he can't believe how strong he is now. Alan remembers to humble himself because he still has a long way to go. He's bound to get left behind if he doesn't put in 100 times the effort compared to players playing on normal mode. Just then Hawkins reveals that there's a C-rank armored ant nearby. Raven warned him about these because he almost lost his life to a swarm of them. Luckily there's only one, so Alan attacks it. Its armor is incredibly tough, so Thomas' attacks don't do anything. Alan switches up the plan and uses Papillon to put it to sleep. He goes to harvest its magic stone, but he can't pierce its armor. This is insane, because Alan's attack stat is 438 right now. After a brief scare, Alan defeats it and earns a whopping 3000 XP. Unfortunately, his blade still can't pierce it, and it's about to break. These ants are way tougher to beat than orcs, but they also give a lot more XP. Alan tries to think of a way to break its armor, and he comes up with an idea. His intelligence stat is over 800, so Alan thinks he might be able to cast spells. Later, Cecil wonders if this is really how Alan wants to spend his 1-year anniversary of being a manservant. Alan is sure, so he speaks with the professor of magic. Alan gets right to the point and says that he would like to know if he has the aptitude to cast spells. Cecil points out that it would be impossible because people without a talent can't use magic. The professor says that they can find out right now, and all Alan has to do is touch a crystal ball. If it glows, then Alan has the aptitude for magic. Alan gives it a try, but nothing happens, so the professor says that Alan doesn't have what it takes to cast spells. Alan is horrified, and he can only wonder what his intelligence stat is even for. Cecil offers him a cookie to make him feel better, but Alan is beside himself. A while later, the Granvilles enjoy a peaceful meal, but it's interrupted by the town alarm. Rickle runs into the room and reveals that a murder galash is headed straight for the city. This news came from one of the guardsmen, and he said that the beast would reach the south gate in less than 2 hours. Unfortunately, Captain Zenoff and his forces are away on a monster hunt, and they won't be back for 2 days. Granville says that they must contact the Adventurers Guild to have them protect the city. Alan says that he will help fight the monster, but Cecil points out that the murder galash is nothing to sneeze at. She reminds him that he's her manservant, so he can't abandon his post. Alan then reminds her that he has one other duty aside from manservant. He says that he's also the family huntsman, and he leaves Cecil in shock. As Alan runs to defend the city, he thinks about how the murder galash is a B-rank monster. The adventurers in this town have no shot at beating it, and Alan isn't sure about his situation either. He spent all his magic power this morning by using it to farm experience points. A bunch of civilians rush into the city, and the guards are about to close the gate so the beast can't get in. One guy begs for them to wait because his wife and daughter are trapped inside a carriage. Just then, Alan is horrified when he sees just how terrifying the murder galash really is. It's more horrifying than he could ever imagine, and it's about to destroy the carriage with the girls. Alan bravely steps forward to stop the beast, and he gets its attention. He taunts it to distract it, and the guards all think that Alan is crazy. They demand for him to run away, but Alan keeps attacking. Our hero tells the guards that he's going to lure the beast towards the White Dragon Mountains, and he runs off. The beast runs after him, and Alan is disappointed to see that his magic power still hasn't recovered. Alan dodges an attack from the murder galash, but he's now in a really bad spot. The beast is taking its time attacking again, so Alan realizes that it must be toying with him. It has a terrifying smirk on its face, but Alan is delighted when he sees that his magic power has fully recovered. This will be his only chance, so he deletes all the copies of most of his creatures. In their place, Alan creates 34 copies of Papillon. This way all his summon buffs are poured into agility and endurance. This allows Alan to lure the beast much easier, and he thinks about how he's now far enough from the city. He's still hiding his true abilities from everyone, and now there's no one watching. He summons his Papillons to put the beast to sleep, but it doesn't work. Either it has some kind of resistance, or Alan says that he might not be trying hard enough. He summons 3 more Papillons, but it still doesn't work. Hours later, we see that Alan is still running for his life, and the beast is showing no signs of slowing down. Alan eventually manages to lose the monster, and he finds a place to hide. None of his debuffs worked on the Murder Galash, and Alan knows that he won't be able to beat it without weakening it first. To make things worse, Alan had to use a bunch of his magic stones. It wasn't a complete waste, because he did get it far from the village. Alan is ready to go home, but he is horrified when he sees that the beast has found him. It's only 3 days later that Alan finally gets to return home. He's completely exhausted as he says that he has finally returned, and he faints at the front gate. Cecil's relieved when he wakes up, but she scolds him for making her worry. Alan explains that he got chased by the Murder Galash for 3 days. He goes to report everything to the Baron, and Granville says that Alan just went through a harrowing journey. Alan explains that he wasn't strong enough to beat the Murder Galash, and it took everything he had just to lead it away. Alan apologizes for causing so much trouble, but Granville says that there's no need. Zenoff says that he and his knights are the ones who normally handle this kind of disaster. However, Alan fended the monster off while they were gone, and he helped keep the casualties to a minimum. His courage is met with a reward of 10 gold coins from the Granville family, and another 10 from the family that Alan rescued. Alan couldn't be happier, because this is the kind of money that can buy him a mithril sword. A while later, Alan takes out a monster and says that his new mithril sword cuts like a hot knife through butter. He's disappointed when it can't cut through the beetle's armor, but he's shocked when it works. The sword plunges right through the beetle, and Alan finally gets his magic stone. Alan then says that today will be all about experimenting. He calls down 2 of his Hawkins and tells the third to go away for a while. He returns one of the 2 he called into its card and puts the other through a pop quiz. He lays out 3 items and hides a piece of fruit in a bag. He tells Hawkins to point at an item that matches the one he hid. Hawkins correctly guesses that it's a piece of fruit, but that's to be expected because this Hawkins was the one that saw him hide it. Alan resummons the one he sent back to its card and tells it to make the same guess. Even though this one was inside its card, it still guesses correctly by pointing at the fruit. Alan then calls the Hawkins he sent away earlier and tells it to guess. This Hawkins has no clue what's in the bag, so this answers a lot of questions Alan had. Next, Alan creates a new Hawkins and gives it the same test. Surprisingly, this Hawkins points at the right fruit. This means that even a newly created creature has the same knowledge as the others. Alan then summons a completely different bird, which also has a high intelligence stat. This bird has no clue what's in the bag, and Alan summarizes everything he learned. Summoned creatures can synchronize and update any new information they receive. However, it's limited to recently summoned or created copies only. Already summoned copies cannot synchronize with each other. Furthermore, only copies of the same creature can synchronize. This means that the creatures are always improving and adapting across summons. Their knowledge is passed down to new generations, even when one of them passes away. This excites Alan because summoned creatures are basically immortal and have unlimited potential. A few months later, Alan spars with Mihai, who's visiting again. As they battle, Alan can't help but think about how Mihai's overpowered. He's still losing to him, even after Alan farmed a couple thousand C-rank monsters and reached level 28. Mihai dislodges the sword from Alan's hand, and he wins the duel once again. Zenoff compliments Mihai because he continues to improve. Alan is furious, and he wonders what is being taught at the academy. Whatever it is, it seems to be paying dividends when it comes to experience points for levels and skills. Mihai acknowledges that Alan is a worthy opponent, and he's glad that Alan is the one protecting Cecil. Later, Mihai is stunned when he learns that Alan fought the Murder Galash. Cecil explains that he fought it for 3 days and then slept for 2 days straight. Mihai says that he wouldn't even have been able to defeat it because B-rank monsters are too strong for him to take on alone. Just then a guard arrives to reveal that the white dragon has migrated. This is huge news, and Granville wonders if the guard is sure. The guard explains that an eyewitness saw the dragon leaving its nest and heading for the carnal territory. It's been ages since this last happened, and Granville says that the time has finally come. If this news is true, then Granville says that they can go back to mining mithril after waiting over a century. This will bring them great wealth, and prosperity will come to their land. He instructs Zenoff to get his men and take a look at the mines. Zenoff recommends that they find the new location of the dragon's nest first, just to be sure it's safe. Once that's done, then they can check the status of the 4 mining sites. Mihai points out that this means that they will have to clear all the monsters between the mining sites and the city. Mihai wants to help, but Zenoff says it's a terrible idea. It would be disastrous if the white dragon decided to return for some reason. That's not even mentioning the fact that the base of the mountains are littered with high-rank orcs and goblins. Mihai agrees to just focus on his studies before heading back to the academy. Alan, on the other hand, has totally different ideas. He doesn't like the fact that the knights will be clearing out the monsters themselves. Alan doesn't want to lose this opportunity to farm experience points, so he says that he will have to formulate a plan. A while later, Alan says that he's pretty far away from town today, and his magic power is at max capacity. There's a lot to experiment with today, because he's now at summon level 5. He's also at fuse level 5 and expansion level 4. It took him over 2 years just to raise his summon level by 1, and he's going to need 30 million experience points to get to the next level. It's been absolutely brutal, and he says that playing on Hell mode is unrelenting. As for his storage capacity, Alan says that he can now hold 50 cards. This means that he can get an even bigger stat boost from his summon buffs. He also has a new skill called Share, and he hopes that it's as awesome as his storage skill. Alan determines that it probably lets him share stuff with his creatures, so he summons Hawkins. Alan uses Share on the bird, and he's stunned by what happens. Alan is able to see himself from Hawkins' point of view, which means that he must be sharing his vision. He can see Hawkins' point of view along with his own, so he wants to turn it up a notch. He tells Hawkins to fly into the sky, and Alan is amazed by the view. It's absolutely beautiful, and Alan realizes that he can also hear what Hawkins hears. He can even control its movements, and it's like he has possessed it. To make things even better, Alan is able to use its special ability called Hawkeye. Hawkins is really far away now, which means that the share skill isn't limited to the summon range. Alan compares this to a gamer strategy called multi-boxing. It's where a player controls multiple characters at once to hog all the items for themselves. It's the preferred playing style of solo gamers, and it's definitely not cheating. This makes Alan wonder how many creatures he can share with at the same time, so he tests it out. He summons 3 more Hawkins, and now he has 5 different POVs, including his own. Alan tries it on Tama, and he's glad to see that he can use it on multiple creatures. Alan goes a little too far by adding another creature, and he gets a major headache. 5 creatures seems to be the max, but that's weird because Alan can summon up to 50 creatures. This makes him wonder if there's some kind of stat requirement to share with more. Alan determines that it must be his intelligence stat. He assumes that he can share with an extra summon for every 200 points he has in intelligence. Alan wants to test it out, so he creates a bunch of birds that give him a boost to his intelligence stat. He raises his intelligence to 1200, and it does in fact allow him to share with 6 creatures. This finally makes Alan realize why the game devs gave summoners such high intelligence. Alan wants to use share on the new D-rank creatures he can make, so he summons them. He's very impressed with his new summons, and with the exception of the Tater Tot, they all start with over 100 intelligence. This means that they should be able to understand him, and Alan is shocked by what this means. He will be able to share with all of them and order them around. If things go well, Alan will be able to hunt monsters using nothing but his summons. Alan gives it a try, and it's a complete success. He just orders them around, and they're able to easily defeat the monsters that gave him problems earlier. His new summons aren't really one-shotting their enemies, but they're still pretty powerful. As for the little Tater Tot, Alan determines that it probably recovers magic power based on its name. Alan has used up all his magic power, so he tells Tater Tot to use its ability called Crop of Magic. The creature plants itself, and the item Alan receives recovers his magic power by a whopping 1000 points. With all the testing out of the way, Alan declares that his Telecommand Creature Squadron is ready for action. Hawkins and Hollows will scout for monsters, while Filet will buff everyone's evasion rate. Then Spidey will cripple the enemy, while Teddy attacks them. Alan couldn't be happier, because he can now farm XP every day of the month using nothing but his summon creatures. Filet's buffs will also boost Alan's intelligence stat to 1600. This means that he can use Share on 8 summons with no problem. After a day of hunting, Alan thinks about how the White Dragon is just beyond the mountains. He can see everything through Hawkins' POV, and this gives Alan an idea on another way he can use his Share ability. Back in his home village, we see that Alan's old friends are sparring against each other. Alan is using his Share ability on one of his birds so he can see them. Alan checks on everyone in his family, and he even leaves them a gold coin. Alan is glad to see that they're all doing well, and he says that he will send them more money every month. A while later, we see that Alan is now 10 years old. Zenoff has been hard at work, and he has a report ready on the mines. Unfortunately, during the long stretch of time that they went unused, the mines have become a nesting ground for monsters. It's not just the 4 mining sites either, because the monsters have spread. The nearby villages that served as mithril refineries have also been taken over by orcs and goblins. Granville wants to get the closest mine up and running, but Zenoff explains that it will take at least 3 years. Granville is eager to get started, so he tells Zenoff to get it done as quickly as he can. As for Viscount Carnal, Zenoff says that he isn't doing so well. He tried to push ahead with their mining operations, and just ended up getting the full force of the White Dragon's wrath. He put his workers in danger, and in the end all his miners were turned to ash in the blink of an eye. His mines will have to shut down, and there's no telling what he will do. Carnal might target Granville's territory, so they have to proceed with caution. As Alan listens, he realizes that the time has finally come for the knights to wipe out all the monsters. Just then, Alan's grimoire shows that he just got 15,000 experience points for defeating an orc. This is because Alan has his creatures farming XP while he's at work. Alan has made the most of these past 6 months by farming like crazy. He thinks about how once he turns 12, he's going to leave the Granvilles to become an adventurer. There are still 2 years until then, so Alan says that he will exterminate more monsters in the meantime. He won't let anyone get in his way, and he won't let the knights hog all the experience points. A while later, a group of goblins prepare for war, and Alan sends his bears to fight them. His bears are easily defeating the goblins, and Alan thinks about an old gamer strategy that he used to use. He would leave the monster nest intact so he could farm experience points when the monsters spawned over and over again. That won't be the case this time, because these monsters feed off humans. This infuriates our hero, and he vows to eradicate every single one of them. The goblins will only continue to eliminate humans, so he will wipe them off the map entirely. Alan's spider and bear combo works perfectly, and the fight is one-sided. The goblins try to run for their lives, but Alan blocks off the only exit. The Goblin King finally appears to join the battle, but Alan doesn't fear it at all. At this point, his team has defeated thousands of C-rank monsters. The battle is over soon after, and Alan gets 48,000 experience points for his trouble. His work isn't done though, because he plans to wipe out all the goblin dens scattered around the area. Once he's done with that, he will eventually go for the orcs and their king. A couple months later, Mihai graduates from the academy and returns home. Cecil's happy to see that he will be living with them again, but something seems different about Mihai. He simply tells Alan that he wants to duel, and Thomas can even tell that something is wrong. The family has never seen Mihai like this, and he's hardly saying anything. Meanwhile, Alan thinks about how now that he's 10 years old, the age restriction on his stats is gone. That means that he's now getting the full benefits of his level. To make the best of this, Alan made 30 copies of Spidey and 20 of Teddy. Alan is determined to win the duel this year because this is him at his very best. Alan amazes everyone at the start of the battle because he's at least 2 times faster than he was last year. Mihai still defends himself well, and Alan can't understand why he can't land a hit. He should be much faster than Mihai now, and he begins to wonder if Mihai is just reading all his moves. Eventually, Alan determines that his sword mastery skill is just too low. Mihai still hits like a truck, and he once again wins the duel. Alan wonders if he needs a bigger agility boost, but that probably isn't it. Mihai already overpowers him, so lowering his attack stat would just make things worse. Mihai then compliments the family's huntsman because he actually made him sweat. Alan reaches to shake his hand, but Mihai seems distracted. Cecil thinks that Alan should ask Mihai to give him lessons, and Alan says that he would love to learn from him. Just then Mihai interrupts them because he wants to speak with Cecil and Thomas. He reveals that he must leave to undertake the noble's duty. Mihai won't be returning home anytime soon, and he can't even tell them what the noble duty is. He will be leaving the next day, and Cecil is horrified. She turns to her parents to see if they can do anything, but they already knew about all of this. Mihai tells her not to worry because he will be back in 3 years, but this just makes it worse. Cecil thought that she finally had her brother back, but now she isn't going to see him for a long time. This makes Alan realize why Granville and Carnal didn't want their children to have a talent. Those with talents must fulfill the noble's duty. The Baron knew this would happen all along, and Alan could only wonder what it is. Mihai prepares to leave the next day, and he says goodbye to his family. He tells Alan to keep Cecil safe, and Alan promises that he will. Mihai leaves, and Alan wonders if he just imagined that Mihai was trembling. A while later, Alan says that he subjugated every goblin den in the area over the past 6 months. He is now level 35, and now is the perfect time to take on the Orc King. Alan comes under attack, but he tells Bronn to defend him. Bronn tanks tons of damage, and Alan wonders if he's losing HP. Alan can't tell, and he thinks about how not being able to see the current HP of his summons is a big problem. His creatures can fight for long periods of time, but they disappear without warning after taking too much damage. Alan uses Spidey to lock down the last orcs guarding the gate, and he presses forward. More orcs appear inside, and Alan determines that there are about 200 of them. He's eager to get all the experience points, so he sends in his team. Alan's plan is working perfectly so far, and he's swimming in XP. Just then a mysterious attack comes out of the sky, and Alan just barely manages to protect himself with Bronn. Alan wonders if it was the Orc King, but that can't be, because there can only be one of those. This attack came from 3 strange-looking orcs, and it's Alan's first real look at magic in this world. Alan uses Bronn to defend himself from more attacks, but these orcs are clever. They hit Alan's forces in the rear, where Bronn can't cover them. Alan realizes that he can attack them with his steel balls, but the orcs simply take cover. They attack from a distance, and Alan can tell just how smart they are. They're staying out of his range, and they even know to ignore his creatures and aim for him. The battle is beginning to turn as the mages call to their leader. Alan says that this is a terrifying scene because there's still over 100 orcs. Alan determines that he must stop playing defense and make this a war of attrition. He has plenty of magic stones, and he can summon more than 20,000 copies of Teddy if he needs to. He will just keep fighting until his magic power runs dry, which won't be anytime soon because he has tons of MP recovery items. The battle rages on, and Alan is pleased to see that things are turning in his favor. That doesn't last long, however, as the Orc King finally arrives. This beast is a B-rank monster, and Alan is shocked to see that it can wipe out his creatures with just one attack. Alan summons several more to join the battle, but the Orc King just keeps taking them out. Alan keeps summoning over and over again, but he realizes that he won't be able to keep up. The orc is barely using any effort, and Alan's bears can't even get close enough to attack. Just then, Bronn manages to protect Alan, just in the nick of time. Unfortunately, Bronn goes down after this, and Alan is now completely vulnerable. He has no choice but to tell Teddy to block the next attack, but it's not nearly as effective. Alan takes major damage, and he's forced to use an item to recover some HP. The battle is taking a dark turn, and Alan doesn't know what to do. He has to keep summoning creatures to try and overwhelm the boss, but he can't do that while also fending off the spells. Alan realizes that he won't survive much longer, so he has to try and get away. Just then, Alan hears a voice that says that Alan is having a hard time. It's Xenoff, and Alan can't believe it. The knight shouldn't be here until tomorrow at the latest. Xenoff reveals that all the smoke coming from this area prompted him to take a look. Xenoff wants an explanation, so Alan says that he was trying to wipe out the orc dens. Xenoff takes a look at the battlefield, and Alan is horrified. There isn't a single person in this world that knows about his powers, but Xenoff is now seeing everything. Alan returns his summoned creatures, and he wonders why Xenoff isn't saying anything about them. Xenoff simply declares that he will handle the Orc King, and his vice captain can take care of the rest. Alan would like to get more experience points, but this is just as good. He has never seen Xenoff go all out, and now he's getting a front row seat to the battle. Alan is not disappointed, as Xenoff easily blocks the Orc King's attack. The vice captain is not surprised, and he says that is why people call the captain Xenoff the War Demon. Alan then watches in amazement as Zenoff parries attacks from a monster that's twice his size. LeBrand steps into battle next, and Alan's also impressed by him. LeBrand begins to glow, and Alan says that this is similar to Krenna's extra skill. LeBrand only uses one attack that causes damage to multiple orcs. What's most impressive though is that he was aiming for the magic orcs the entire time. LeBrand shows his incredible skills, and Alan says that he's just as overpowered as the captain. Alan is worried when the Orc King unleashes a powerful strike, but Zenoff is fine. He comes crashing down from the sky, and he slices the Orc King in half. Alan is left in disbelief because the captain took out a B-rank monster in one fell swoop. That night, Zenoff says that he had a feeling that Alan was the one that took out the goblin nests. Alan has no choice but to admit to it, so Zenoff explains how he knew. It was not long after Alan was hired that he started hearing reports of monster carcasses piling up outside the city. It wasn't difficult for him to narrow it down after he saw how Alan competed on the same level as Mihai. Zenoff also determines that Alan has a talent. He isn't sure what it is, but he assumes that those animals who are fighting the orcs are somehow part of it. Alan confirms this, but he doesn't reveal anything else. There is no telling what kind of mess it will make if he says anything about being in direct contact with the god of creation. To make things worse, Zenoff reveals that Granville already knows about Alan having a talent. Zenoff says that he won't tell anyone about the animals he saw, but in return, he wants Alan to keep him informed on the progress of his monster hunts. Alan doesn't want to keep undercutting the knights for experience points, so he agrees. Alan then can't help but wonder how Zenoff is still alive. He has battle scars so bad that they don't even go away after leveling up. 2 weeks later, we see that Alan was finally able to defeat an Orc King all on his own. He earns a whopping 25,000 experience points, and he says that he now has it down to a science. First, he attacks from all sides with a team of 40 bears. This puts a big dent into the orc forces and prevents them from getting into formation. Then he has his team target the magic orcs until they're eliminated. The total XP Alan gets for defeating an orc den is 335,000. That's 7 times more than what he gets for defeating a goblin one. A few weeks later, the Granvilles are visited by a royal messenger. He gives Granville some papers, and Granville can understand what this is. The messenger reveals that it's his son's diary. The family is horrified by what this might mean, and the messenger says that Mihai carried out his mission dutifully. Unfortunately, his life has come to an end, and he has been laid to rest. The family screams in agony, and Granville refuses to believe it. It's only been 6 months, and they must have known that Mihai was fresh out of the academy. Granville blames the royals, as he assumes that they just use Mihai like fodder because their family status as lower-ranking nobles. The messenger wonders if that's what he wants to tell the king, but Granville knows how dangerous that would be. Mihai's mother breaks down in tears, and the messenger leaves. Alan then thinks back to the day that Mihai left. He was acting very strange, and he was even trembling when he told Alan to look after Cecil. Alan is horrified as he begins to wonder if Mihai knew that he was going to die. The terrified Cecil wonders what's going on, and Granville tells everyone else to leave the room before he tells her. Thomas can't understand why even he has to leave, and Alan wonders why he's only going to tell Cecil. Outside, Alan can hear how upset Cecil gets. Granville tells her everything, and she can't believe that he knew what kind of danger Mihai was in. Granville explains that it's part of a certain duty that nobles are expected to fulfill. Cecil refuses to accept it, and she runs off to her room. Alan can't make sense of any of this, and he wonders if there's some catch to being a noble that forces them to adhere to this deadly duty. Later, Rickle hopes that Cecil's okay, but she hasn't come out of her room since she heard the news. Rickle explains that Granville's brother also lost his life at a young age. This is all very terrible, and it has to do with this mysterious duty. Just then, everyone panics as a maid reveals that Cecil is missing. They desperately search for her, and Alan sees that she must have climbed out of her window. Alan rushes to look for her outside, and he hopes that he can find her before she does anything rash. Elsewhere, we find Cecil, who's getting too tired to walk anymore. She can't believe that Mihai is really gone, and she looks at the plush he gave her. The last thing she did at home was read Mihai's diary that he left behind. Mihai knew that he was being sent to a dangerous hotspot, and he had the feeling that he wouldn't make it out alive. Alan finds her, and she assumes that he's here to drag her back home. Alan says that he's not, and he's just here to wait on her as usual. It's his job as a manservant, so Alan patiently stands by her. Cecil angrily tells him to just go home, but Alan reveals that he brought her some food. Cecil hasn't eaten since she heard the news, so she is starving. As she eats, she begins to cry, but she tells Alan that she isn't. She wonders if Alan thought that Mihai was strong, and he says that he was. Alan points out that he couldn't win a single duel against him, and Cecil begins to cry even more. Unfortunately, thinking more about what Mihai wrote in his diary doesn't make things any better. Mihai was afraid of losing his life, and all he wanted to do was go home to his family. Cecil has a talent just like her brother did, so she fears that she will end up losing her life as well. This is terrifying to her because she doesn't want to die. Alan then shocks her as he wonders if she would like to come with him and leave the city behind. He explains that she can just forget about her family. They would be free to travel the world and visit all sorts of places. Cecil points out that they're too young, and Alan says that they can wait until next year. They will be 12 years old, which means they can finally register as adventurers. Cecil says that she wouldn't be able to because she will be enrolled in the academy by then. Alan surprises her again as he says that she doesn't have to enroll. It's her life, and she can choose how she wants to live it. Alan wonders what she wants to do, but Cecil isn't even sure. She takes a moment to think about Mihai and what he would want for her. Cecil makes her decision and tells Alan that they're going home now. Her legs are hurting though, so she informs Alan that he will have to carry her. On their way, Cecil quietly thanks Alan for his words, and he simply tells her that it was nothing. When she returns home, the Granvilles are relieved to have their daughter back. Granville doesn't waste any time, and he tells Cecil that she has nothing to worry about. Soon they will be mining mithril again, so he is sure that they can get Cecil an exemption from the noble's duty. Granville will have to gift the royal family with mining rights, but he's ready to do anything to protect Cecil. Just then, Cecil shocks everyone as she declares that she will meet her obligation to serve the noble's duty. It's pretty unbelievable, but it has to do with what she read in Mihai's diary. He said that the whole reason he went along with the noble's duty was to overcome his own weakness. Cecil then declares to everyone that she will follow in Mihai's steps and she won't flee from her responsibilities. A few months later, we see that Alan is now wiping out Orc Kings with hardly any effort. Half a year has passed since Mihai's death, and life for the Granvilles has gone back to normal. The knighthood has wiped out all the Orc boroughs, and Alan has been collecting tons of B-rank magic stones. People have been moving back near the refineries, so the mining operations will soon be up and running. The only problem now is whether Cardinal will lash out after losing his mithril. Later, Alan climbs up the White Dragon Mountain. Cecil wanted to come hunting with him, but Alan knew that there was no way that she could make the climb. Eventually, he encounters the giant bug monsters that he was looking for. Alan knows that they could cause problems for the mithril miners, so he's going to wipe them out. From what he's heard about armored ants, there should be over 1,000 of their soldiers inside their nest. They will likely be protecting the B-rank ant queen, who's laying the eggs to create more soldiers. Alan doesn't have much information to go on, and he can't see what the nest is like from the sky. There's only one entrance, and it's only big enough for a single ant to pass through. If he tried to fight them inside the nest, he would just get swarmed. Alan likes a challenge, so he decides to just wing it. He summons his team of creatures, and the fight begins. The ants just keep coming out, and it's like there's an endless number of them. An entire month passes by, and Alan's in bad shape. It's been 30 whole days, and he still can't beat this ant colony. He has come twice a week and taken down over 200 ants per day. That's 2,000 ants total, so Alan can only wonder what's going on. What's even more strange is that all the ant corpses he leaves behind keep getting cleared out. This makes Alan wonder if the ant queen is eating them and laying new eggs. Alan loves all this insane XP he's getting because he's earning 30,000 for every ant. Unfortunately, the endless stream of them means he can't collect their magic stones. Another month passes, and Alan has now defeated 5,000 ants. Just then, the ants finally stop coming out, and Alan wonders if his persistence has finally paid off. He's ready to take down the ant queen, so he sends Howley inside. He shares vision with Howley, and he's able to make a map of the nest. It's like a huge maze, and one of his Howleys is taken out by some ants. Luckily, he has more Howleys, and one of them finds the ant's egg chamber. Alan is controlling 8 Howleys at once, and he's able to map out in several directions. Unfortunately, it's mentally exhausting to control so many creatures, so Alan wishes that he brought a snack. After hours of mapping the nest, Alan realizes that he has to head home soon. He doesn't want to pass up this opportunity, so he keeps mapping for a while longer. Luckily, he finds the queen soon after and declares that it's time to put an end to this. Alan heads inside himself and comes face to face with the queen. Alan sends in his bears to take out all the small fries and to clear a path. Eventually, all that's left is the queen, so Alan tells the bears to finish the job. The queen turns out to be extremely powerful though, and she wipes out several bears. Luckily, Alan can still summon them faster than she can beat them, so he sends in more. Alan instructs the bears on how to attack, and they eventually manage to defeat the queen. Doing so gives Alan 45,000 experience points, and it only took him 20 summons to beat it. It took him over 100 to beat the Orc King the first time, so Alan wonders what happened. He determines that the queen must have been super weak after giving birth to so many extra soldier ants. It's getting way too late to return to the city, so he will have to camp here for the night. Alan looks for something to prove that he defeated the Ant Queen, and he finds something else. The next day, Alan reveals that he brought something from a nest up in the White Dragon Mountains. He explains that it's the exoskeleton of an armored Ant Queen. Alan says it like it's no big deal, but the Granvilles are in shock. Cecil doesn't believe him and says that he should come up with a better excuse for coming home late. Granville wonders what Zenoff thinks, but Zenoff doesn't know what to make of it. This could be what Alan says, but Zenoff explains that he's never seen an Ant Queen before. To make things worse, Zenoff says that not even the Knighthood has enough resources to defeat an entire ant colony. Cecil really doesn't believe him now, and she assumes that Alan just painted a big ant. Zenoff explains that ant colonies are filled with thousands of soldiers. To make things even more impossible, the interior of the colony is a complex maze. These two things mean it would be impossible to defeat them. Alan agrees and thinks about how it was only possible because of his summons. Just then, Alan remembers what he found. He shows everyone some mithril and explains that he found it in the chamber where the queen was. This stuns everyone because it's the extremely rare mithril ore. It's not something a person can just stumble across, and it validates Alan's entire story. This is extremely serious, so Granville demands for Alan to tell him all the details. Alan shows them where he found the nest and the map he made. Zenoff says that there's no doubt in his mind anymore because Alan just found a 5th vein of mithril for them to mine from. This is an incredible find, so Zenoff declares that he will send his knights to check it immediately. Granville commends Alan and says that he's really outdone himself. Alan has become the first person to discover a brand new vein of mithril, so that entitles him to a stake in the operation. Because of this, Granville offers to give Alan 30% of the mining rights. Alan doesn't even know what that means, but that's to be expected. Understanding the full magnitude of just how grand this is hard to comprehend. Sebas tells Alan to give it a few years, and he will understand just how incredible the benefits are. A few months later, Alan finally turns 12 years old. The mithril mines have restarted after a century of unuse, and everyone is hard at work. Everyone is so busy that work on the vein Alan discovered won't start until next year. Alan has nothing to fear from the monsters around here anymore, and he doesn't have to worry about money thanks to his stake in the mines. However, Alan says that something doesn't feel right. Things are going way too well, and it's not the hardcore gaming that he thrives on. Alan doesn't want to live in comfort, and he would much rather live on the edge. He determines that he has to expand his horizons, and he decides to bring it up to the Baron later. Later, the messenger arrives once again, and this time he's accompanied by Carnal. The messenger explains that he has come with a proposal. The Granvilles and the Carnals have been trapped in an endless cycle of prosperity and decline at the whims of the White Dragon. The royal family now seeks to solve this problem once and for all. Granville is stunned as he reads that they want Granville and Carnal to co-manage the White Dragon Mountains. From now on, they would manage the mining operations and split all the profits equally. Carnal is of course already on board, and now they just need Granville's signature. Alan thinks about how this was supposed to be Granville's turn for prosperity and Carnal's turn to decline. Granville apologizes to the messenger as he explains that he needs to visit the royal capital to assess the situation first. The messenger takes great offense to this as he assumes that Granville thinks he's lying. He says that the mithril profits have poisoned Granville's mind and his greed will be his undoing. After they leave, Granville finally lets out his frustration. They have suffered for over a century, and fortune was finally going in their favor. Now they're demanding half of it, so Granville says that this contract they want him to sign is outrageous. Zenoff won't be back from the mountains for another 2 days, so Granville says that they will head to the royal capital as soon as he returns. Afterwards, Alan thinks about how now he can't bring up how he wants to move on from being a manservant. Just then, a maid screams as something has happened to Cecil. Alan immediately rushes to her room and sees that a servant has been knocked out. In her room, he finds that Cecil is being kidnapped. Alan doesn't even hesitate, and he attacks the intruders. One of them is really powerful though, so Alan is forced to change his stock cards to boost his stats. The intruder thinks that he's giving up, but Alan is just getting started. The intruder is now caught off guard, as Alan is hitting much harder than before. Nearby, Granville is told what's happening. The intruders realize that they have to get out of here, so they use an item to cover the room in smoke. This smoke turns out to be some kind of sleeping gas, and it knocks Alan to the ground. Alan can only watch as Cecil is taken away, and he passes out. When Alan wakes up, he's relieved to see that Cecil is still alive. Alan is all tied up, but he says that the intruders don't know that he's a summoner. Luckily, summoners can still fight as long as they can see. Alan then summons some of his birds somewhere they can't be seen. He then shares vision with them so he can assess the situation. They're in a warehouse and being watched closely by the thugs. Their leader's name is Dagra, and he arrives to wonder why they captured another kid. The thugs explain that Alan knows how to wield a sword, so they figured that they could sell him as a slave. Dagra punches one of the thugs and reminds them that they aren't the ones calling the shots. He leaves and tells them to eliminate the boy if he causes any trouble. It turns out that they have a boss, and he was the one that put Dagra in charge. Dagra is a powerful warrior, and he was chosen because he's the only one strong enough to beat Zenoff. Alan is sure that he can beat these clowns, but he's horrified to see that he dropped his mithril sword. All he has in his inventory right now is a dagger and some steel balls. Unfortunately, he's not confident that he can fight and protect Cecil with just these weapons. When one guy leaves for the bathroom, Alan determines that this is his chance to scope the area. While looking around, Alan sees that they're in some kind of ship. A look outside reveals that they're in the air. This is the most shocking revelation of all, as Alan realizes that they're in a magic ship. Alan freaks out for a moment as he wonders how they're supposed to escape. After calming down, Alan continues exploring. He overhears a laugh that he recognizes, and he sees that Carnal is here. Carnal's laughing like a maniac, and Alan says that he knew that Carnal was the one behind this. The messenger is here as well, and he points out that he pulled a lot of strings to help Carnal. Carnal acknowledges this, and he promises to give the messenger some mining rights in return. The messenger's only concern is that Granville won't sign the contract. Carnal tells him to relax and explains that he's taking care of it. He made sure that Granville got a letter warning against any funny business. Carnal then shows how truly evil he is. He says that if Granville doesn't sign the contract, he is sure that sending his daughter's hand in the mail will change his mind. Alan is horrified to hear this, and he becomes furious. Just then, Cecil wakes up, and she begins to panic. One of the thugs says he should kick her a few times to silence her, and Alan realizes that he has to do something fast. He has spec'd out all his stats for PvP, so he's ready to fight. First, he summons Papillon and puts one of the thugs to sleep. Alan then frees himself and says that it's time for payback. The thugs want to take this little punk down, but Alan summons the rest of his team. The thugs are terrified, and Alan doesn't use his summons at all. Instead, he beats the thugs himself and goes to check on Cecil. Unfortunately, before he can free her, he is found by Dagra. Dagra attacks in an instant, and Alan wonders if he just teleported. Dagra can't understand why Alan seems so confused because it's just his skill. Dagra moves in to eliminate Alan, but Alan has a trick up his sleeve. He uses his parrot-like bird and recreates Carnal's voice. The fake voice tells Dagra to stop messing around, and this distracts him for just a moment. This is all the time Alan needs, as he uses Spidey's web to trap Dagra. Alan takes Cecil away, and he has Braun block the path. A look outside reveals that they're approaching a landing strip, and they're only 100 meters up from the ground. They don't have much time, so he tells Cecil that they will have to jump down. Cecil really doesn't want to, but they have no choice. Alan tells her that they will be okay, and he puts all his stat boosts in endurance. Cecil's still not ready, but they're completely out of time now. They jump down and crash straight into the ground. Alan is in a great deal of pain as he just took a ton of damage, and he realizes that he just broke every bone in his legs. He uses one of his healing items and then confidently tells Cecil that it's time to get her back home. Alan explains that he healed her with his leaf of life and he wonders if she's okay. Cecil doesn't care about any of that and she reveals that she saw the monsters earlier. She knows that they belong to Alan and she can only wonder how strong he really is. She also wants to know where the leaf came from, but most of all she can't understand how he just jumped out of a flying ship. Unfortunately, there's no time to explain because they will be getting chased again soon. As they make their escape, Alan summons Howley to scout the area. Howley reveals that Dagra is heading their way. Alan tries to zigzag, and it gives him some information on how Dagra is tracking them. Dagra seems to be tracking their footsteps, which is actually good news. If he were tracking them on some kind of map, it would be a lot harder to get away. Dagra eventually loses track of them, and Alan says that it will take 1,000,000 years before Dagra is good enough to catch him. Cecil knows how strong Alan is now, so she wonders why he doesn't just fight. Alan explains that he struggles against Dagra's type, so he doubts he could win. Eventually they escape the city, but there's another problem. They will have to reach the border checkpoint at the northern edge of the White Dragon Mountains, but it will take 2 entire days. Luckily, Alan is a genius, and he comes up with an idea. He summons a bunch of bronze, and he jumps on their backs to travel. He says that this way, Dagra won't be able to track their footsteps, and Cecil says that he's really smart. That night, Cecil points out that Alan actually does have a skill. Alan admits it to her, and explains that it comes with a lot of perks. Cecil wonders why he doesn't tell anyone, and Alan says that nothing good would come of it. The next morning their escape continues, and Alan says that they should be pretty far away from Carnel City now. Alan uses Vision Share, and he wonders if Dagra has given up. Unfortunately, Dagra jumps down from the city wall and starts running around it at an incredible speed. Alan realizes what he's doing, and he says that this is really bad. Dagra's running around the entire city, searching for their footsteps, and he's bound to find them. Alan determines that they will still have to travel in the air, even if it slows them down. 2 days later, they reach the border checkpoint. The guards are relieved to see that Cecil's okay, and Alan shows them the Granville family crest. Unfortunately, his vision reveals something terrible. Alan says that there's no time to explain, and he rushes past the guards. Cecil wonders what's wrong, and Alan reveals that Dagra has found their footprints. What's most terrifying though is that Dagra has shaken off Hawkins, and now Alan can't even see him. Alan is also worried because this might mean that Dagra has figured out his ability. Cecil is really scared, and she wonders if they would be safer with the guards. Alan explains that the checkpoint doesn't have enough manpower to fend off someone as strong as Dagra. Cecil can tell just how dire the situation is, so she says that Alan should just save himself and leave her behind. Alan can tell that this situation is too much for a 12-year-old, and she's cracking under the pressure. Alan tells her not to worry because Dagra can't catch up to them if they keep running at this pace. Besides that, Alan says that he made a promise that he has to keep no matter what. Before Mihai left, Alan swore to him that he would keep Cecil safe. Alan intends on keeping that promise, so he will return Cecil home at all costs. Cecil becomes emotional, and she thanks our hero. A day later, Alan heals Cecil some more and explains that they will be home by tomorrow. She will only have to hold on for a while longer, but Alan senses something terrifying. It's the murder Galash that Alan fought 3 years ago and couldn't beat. It's chasing them now as well, and this really complicates things. Unlike Dagra, this beast won't hesitate to end their lives if it gets anywhere close to them. This only leaves Alan with one option, so he declares that he will fight the beast. Alan comes face to face with it, and it screams like the monster that it is. Alan tells the ugly mutt that he doesn't have much time, and he thinks about his plan. He will simply throw all his heavy hitters at the beast until its life comes to an end. Alan summons Spidey and his bears, and they begin their attack. Alan even uses his iron balls to attack, but it's no use. The monster is very intelligent, and it knows better after seeing that attack from last time. The powerful beast breaks free, and Cecil watches in disbelief. Alan is fighting equally against this insanely strong monster, and she has never seen anything like it. The beast goes on the offensive, and Alan urgently tells Braun to protect him. The murder Galash is too powerful though, and it captures Alan. Cecil is worried for his life, but Alan screams for her to stay away. The beast begins to crush Alan, and Alan calls it a sadistic freak. This thing is smiling right in his face, and it's obviously enjoying Alan's suffering. Things only get worse as the monster crushes every bone in Alan's body until he's unable to defend himself. The beast then consumes Alan, and Cecil is horrified. Just then she sees that Alan actually managed to stop the beast. Alan tells the giant that it won't be eating him today, and he strikes it with his dagger. Alan reveals that he swapped all his buffs over to HP and endurance the moment he was caught. Alan is now the one with a smile on his face because he hasn't felt an adrenaline rush like this in a really long time. Alan heals himself one last time and he's ready to end this. He declares that the overgrown beast is going to lose and he plunges his blade deeper into its eye. His attack does major damage throughout the monster's entire body and he manages to defeat it. This is a major accomplishment and Alan gets 82,000 experience points. Alan couldn't be happier, and he says that this is a total domination that was 3 years in the making. Cecil cries as she thought Alan's life ended, but he explains that he uses healing leaves to recover. Unfortunately, they're not out of the woods yet, as Dagra has found them. Alan's in bad shape because he's out of iron balls, and his dagger is stuck in the murder galash. That doesn't leave him with many options, so he tells Cecil to leave while he fights Dagra. Dagra is not impressed by the hero act, and he kicks Alan with incredible power. Alan knew that this guy was strong, and that attack just proved it. Dagra was right in front of him, and he still couldn't see the attack coming. Dagra takes out his blade, and tells Alan that he's going to make him suffer. He wants Alan to really feel the pain, as payback for making him chase them. Dagra prepares to attack, but everyone is shocked as a giant fireball stops him. Alan is in disbelief, as he wonders if Cecil just cast a spell. Cecil's in bad shape as well, but she determines that she has to help Alan. Alan desperately tells her not to, because she's no match for Dagra. Dagra moves at rapid speed, and he immediately takes her out. He tells Cecil to be grateful, since he only let her live, because he has to bring her back. Alan calls Dagra a scumbag, and he reveals what he heard about him. On the ship, the thugs were talking about Dagra, and they mentioned how he ran away from war. Alan calls him a coward for running, and now he's fighting kids for a living. He calls Dagra a real loser, and this sets him off. Dagra kicks Alan again, and really starts beating him down. Eventually, Dagra declares that it's time for Alan's life to end, but he can't understand why Alan is still smiling. Alan heals himself, and he reveals that it's too late for Dagra to escape. Dagra can't understand what's going on, and we see what was Alan's real plan. Alan used his share ability on one of his birds to tell Xenoff what was going on. Alan did this the moment they crossed into Granville territory. Dagra is not impressed, as he doesn't think much of knights. Xenoff defended the kingdom for a whole decade, and his reward was becoming the captain for some noble out in the middle of nowhere. Dagra is furious as he explains that all his brothers in arms lost their lives because of spineless knights. Dagra rushes in to attack, but he's surprised when his blade hardly does any damage. Xenoff explains that he also lost his brothers in arms, but they laid their lives on the line for the kingdom and for the people. They serve their duty, and Xenoff won't let anyone dishonor their memory. Alan watches in amazement as he sees Xenoff use his extra ability for the first time. It's called Aura Blade, and it does so much damage that it creates a giant crater in the ground. Alan is left in shock as this one single attack completely sliced Dagra in half. Alan returns Cecil home, and he says that their 4-day escape is finally over. Alan then explains to Granville that Carnal was behind the kidnapping. After losing the economic boom of his mithril mines, he struck a deal with the royal messenger. Together, they plotted to steal half of Granville's mining rights. They needed to ensure that Granville never told the king about the contract, so they took Cecil as hostage. Granville is furious, and he tells Sebas to make preparations so he can go to the royal capital. He plans to tell everything to the king, but Alan would like for him to reconsider. This would definitely get Carnal in trouble, but Alan doubts that the royal messenger would face any repercussions. Instead, Alan reveals that he has a different suggestion. He says that he will forgo his own claim on the mining rights and return them to Granville. This way, Granville can use it as a bargaining chip to convince the king to conduct an extensive investigation. Granville is shocked because Alan is suggesting that he bribe the royal family. Alan isn't holding back because Carnal and the messenger tried to line their own pockets without getting their hands dirty. Alan was taught well by his father, and he knows that real men roll up their sleeves to do the dirty work themselves. This is what they do for their family, so Alan wonders if Granville is ready to do that for his. Sebas says that Alan is way out of line, but Granville agrees with him. Granville has always been obligated to take the righteous and honorable path because he's a noble. However, Cecil being taken away from him has taught him that he needs to do whatever it takes. He will protect his family at all costs, and he tells Alan that he will make good use of his mining rights. After Granville told the king about Cecil's kidnapping, all the perpetrators were punished. Carnell's territory was dissolved and placed under royal rule. After what happened, Granville granted Cecil and Alan permission to attend a lecture on the details of the noble's duty. This is a big secret, so they have to promise never to tell anyone. After they agree, Gandalf shows them a map of the world. He explains that their kingdom called Radish has been attacked by the empire called Guillemot many times. They are currently at peace, but that's only as the public is concerned. The true timeline is known as the Demon Lord's history. Alan is then shocked when he learns that a Demon Lord first appeared 112 years ago. The Demon Lord demanded for the leader of every country to submit to his rule, but of course none of them agreed. 50 years after that, the Great Calamity happened. This calamity was marked when every monster in the world went up by 1 rank. The Demon Lord was going on the offensive, and he invaded the central continent with an army consisting of millions of B-rank and higher monsters. Many people perished, and 4 countries were wiped out within 4 short years. The invasion spread to other places as well, including the Elven continent and the Dwarven kingdom. In the face of this threat, the Empire of Guillemot stepped up to form the 5-continent alliance. This resulted in a system that called for each country to establish an academy. Any child blessed with a talent would then undergo training before being sent to the front lines. However, that wasn't sufficient enough to stop the Demon Lord army's invasion. The Guillemot Empire lost 1/4 of their territory, making everyone think that Doomsday was close at hand. That is until one day when a hero known as Helmius was born and he restored humanity's hope. Helmius was the first person to ever have the hero talent. The tide of battle shifted dramatically in their favor after he took the battlefield at age 15. He forced the Demon Lord back and reclaimed the Empire's lost territory. Even now at age 22, he continues to lead the war effort on the front lines. Hearing about a Demon Lord and a hero makes Alan think about when he first loaded up this game. Hero and Demon Lord were both options he could pick, and they were both 5-star difficulty. It's safe to say that those 2 classes can determine the fate of the world. The kingdom issued a decree to reclaim their land, and Alan realizes that this was what his village was doing. As for the noble's duty, it's an agreement for all members of nobility born with a talent to serve 3 years in the military. Unfortunately, even with the hero on their side, half of the soldiers sent to the front lines lose their lives. This is terrible to hear, and our heroes can only think about Mihai. A while later, Granville explains that the issue with Carnell is finally over. Granville gives Alan some money, which includes the bounty on the murder Galash, along with the reward for Alan's rescue of Cecil. Alan is grateful, but he can't help but notice that there are 3 bags of money in front of him. Granville acknowledges this and explains that he has a request. Granville tried to ask the king for a pardon to get Cecil out of military service. Unfortunately, it was denied because Cecil's talent as a wizardess is too valuable. Alan says it's understandable because Cecil's talent is really special and she would be a powerful force on the battlefield. Granville's worried about Cecil, and he has no choice but to turn his hopes to Alan. Granville offers Alan another 600 gold coins if he accompanies Cecil to the academy. Then he wants Alan to act as her bodyguard when she eventually enters the battlefield. Granville puts his pride aside, and he begs for Alan to accept. Alan has a lot of respect for Granville, so he tells him the truth. Alan reveals that his talent requires him to undergo a rigorous trial in exchange for unrivaled power from Lord Elmia himself. Granville's then shocked when Alan says that he's a summoner. Alan tells Granville to rest assured because he will do everything in his power to keep Cecil safe. Granville is grateful, but Alan says that he has a request. Instead of taking all this money, he would like to propose 2 changes to his reward. First, in exchange for 400 gold coins, he wants Granville to exempt his family from the head tax. Granville accepts, and Alan gives his second condition. He returns the family crest and says that he would like to resign as manservant. He will be independent while still providing security for Cecil. Alan is shocked when Granville says that he saw this coming. He gives our hero a special dagger and explains what's going on. Granville has been promoted from Baron to Viscount thanks in large part to Alan's contributions. The sword Alan is now holding makes him one of Granville's guests. It's proof that the Granville family will always stand behind him. Alan has done an amazing job, so Granville is proud to welcome him as his honored guest. Alan finally realizes that this is the conclusion of all the events he has triggered over the past 12 years. Alan always wondered why he was reincarnated into this world instead of just being teleported. It's only now that Alan truly understands. Being born into serfdom led him to hunting boars and then working his way into the service of the Baron. Without that experience, he couldn't attend the academy or get the skill set he needs to fight the Demon Lord. This also explains why Hell Mode even exists in the first place. His search for a hardcore game led him here, and it turns out that Elmia was looking for someone like him all along. The Demon Lord poses a great threat, and they need Alan's help to restore balance to the world. Alan accepts Granville's offer and declares that he will move forward with Cecil and defeat the Demon Lord. Thanks for watching my recap of the first season of this anime. Make sure to like the video.